Lucifer means Lightbringer presents the mythical astronomy of ice and fire. The Weirwood Compendium, Part 5. To Ride the Green Dragon.
I extended the musical intro there, so you got the little da 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 da. Puts a little more finality on it. But hello, everyone. Just welcome to Starry Wisdom Sunday. We've got a crossover Weirwood pirates and football theme costume going on for you. I am a Viking, which is what the Ironborn are. Inventors of sea dragon folklore. And with me, I have two very special guests. I have Sanrixian and MelanieLot7, creator of a new YouTube channel. Melanie, why don't you say hello first and tell everyone about your new YouTube channel that you have.
Hey everybody, it's MelanieLot7, and yep, just like LML said, I have a new YouTube channel. It's called MelanieLot7, quite appropriately. And right now I only have one video up there, and it's about silenced women, but there's more in the pipes. I'm working on an essay about the king under the hill, so be on the lookout for that.
Oh, nice. We were just chatting up the king under the hill on the Twitterverse, so I'm glad to see those ideas are going to go somewhere. And
Yes.
we'll take a minute to talk about your amazing first video in just a second, as it dovetails very nicely with some of my own Weirwood stigmata research. But first, let's let birthday girl Sanrixian say hello. Say hello, Sanri.
Hello, everyone. As LML said, it's your Starry Wisdom Sunday with your Starry Wisdom host.
Wow, the Grey King ate a big fat tab of acid, didn't he?
We're going under the sea. So this is going to be our little Twitter promo when I drop the YouTube link. Woo! I have pineapple leggings on because that was about as close to theme as I could get today for you guys.
Nice.
And yeah, thanks for all the birthday wishes, everyone. You're all super sweet, and y'all make my heart, or the spot where my heart used to be, so warm and fuzzy.
Yeah, it's warm with a black fire.
Oh,
That's
yes.
what it is.
Did
That
you
is
just call me
nice.
a fake Targaryen?
Say that again?
Did you just call me a fake Targaryen?
No, I don't think so.
Call me a Blackfire.
No, the Blackfires are the real deal, man.
Okay.
I'm on Team Blackfire all the way.
Actually,
see. I'm not really, but I love their symbolism. So
I know.
They do have better sigil. But in any case, this is like going inside the Grey King's head. Like the other picture was the Grey King inside the hall. This is like what it looks like inside Grey King's head, I think.
Yes, definitely. He's got a frown because he's confused as to why he was forced to take this acid and go on this journey with us.
He's just waiting for the trip to stop. It's been like 1,000 years and 6, and it still hasn't let down. And he's just like, man.
He's exhausted.
He's exhausted.
What
were we going to say?
I said, end this for me, please.
Well, so what we did is I spent a little time last night honoring Sanrixian, the Hand of the Dragon, with some artwork of my own, which I will now honor Sanrixian with again. Yes. First, we have Mallory Starskin, which I created in Photoshop. Like this one, a little bit of a patch face vibe. Purple and green flames under the sea, as you know. And then let's see, we've got the psychedelic Weirwood submarine. And this one I'm going to have to zoom in at least on a couple parts. First of all, under the sea, everything is inverted. So instead of Weirwood, it is now a shade of the evening submarine with its blue-black bark. And you'll notice that Sanri is out of the shame cube. She used to be in the shame cube. If we scroll up, oh, look, she's on top of the sub. Now she's smiling and she's looking at moon meteors with me. Happy birthday, Sanrixian.
Thank you.
Out of the shame cube.
For one day.
I'm sorry, Melanie, what would you say?
Oh, I said that's the best. I'm so glad that Sanri's out of the shame cube. She finally made it out.
Yeah, she's way too quick to put herself in there. But of course, she can pierce the veil of space and time and sort of travel in and out as she wishes. Mostly the secret is that mostly she's in there just to cheer up everyone else in the shame cube. But that's
Basically.
okay. That's the kind of person Sanrixian is. So good news, guys. I found the option deeply embedded within YouTube to turn my super chats back on. And Leah Mickley has primed the pump with a nice friendly super chat. Thank you, Leah. And if you have a question that you'd like to attach to that, just give me a tag and I'll be happy to answer it. So yes, those are working now. Those are back on. We also still have the paypal.me/mythicalastronomy, but super chats are just a little more fun. People just like how they light up the screen. So go ahead and use those if you'd like to. And yeah, just like normal. So we've got one more picture, but I've got to actually upload it to Twitter in order to share it with you. So let me do that real quick. But one thing that I do want to let you guys know right at the beginning, I'd like everyone to do me a big favor. You guys, I bring you a lot of entertainment. I put on the costumes for y'all. I'm going to ask you a very small favor. I want everyone right now who's either watching this live or watching this on the replay, pull up a separate window, go over to YouTube, and search for the channel Between Two Weirwoods and give me a subscription because I made a new channel for Between Two Weirwoods. And I guess the easier way would be to drop the link in the chat. Why don't we do that? 1 second here. Let's see if I can do it faster than my mods or if they beat me to it. Yes, I've created a new channel because basically it was just getting a little too mixed up with all the Between Two Weirwood stuff and the mythical astronomy stuff all run together. And so I would like to split them out. I also want to see what Between Two Weirwoods, what kind of following it gets on its own, uncontaminated with my mythical astronomy madness. So if you guys would just go and give that a subscription, I would really appreciate it. Very soon we will be doing the new streams on this channel. And so you'll need to subscribe in order to get the notifications. Yes, those would be good. So with that said, that's my main announcement. But MelanieLot7, before we dive into this episode, and while we allow people to continue filing into the pews here, you're, pardon me, you're had a Cranogman frog in there. Your new episode is great. Your first video is all about silenced women as a theme. And it fits in with my analysis of the Weirwood stigmata and also with the general idea of just like studying archetypes. You've identified essentially the silenced woman as an archetype, and going on that journey of exploration obviously takes you to a lot of the Nissa women who've gotten the Weirwood stigmata. But why don't you talk for a minute about that? Because I was really blown away. I thought it was a great debut.
Well, thank you very much. Yes, it's something that to me is really, really interesting. The idea of the silenced woman as an archetype, because if you look at the silent sisters, they embody a lot of the qualities of a silenced woman that are echoed across a lot of the other characters. For example, they wear gray, they don't speak, they're very meek, they're cast to the fringes of society, and there are a lot of female characters for which all of those things, you can just check the boxes off. And some of them, to me, that are very interesting and really, really need a voice are the sex workers. Shout out to Jinx Lear if she's watching. I don't know if she is, but she's just an amazing advocate for sex workers. So yeah, my video discusses Shay, Alea, and a lot of the other silenced women. So yeah, if you get a chance, check it out.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was nice because it's a theme that, like I said, dovetails into the mythical astronomy symbolism, but you went ahead and sort of just studied it on its own so that people who aren't all hopped up on mythical astronomy mojo can enjoy it and read it. I thought that was really good. But of course, anybody that's a myth head would watch this video and pretty quickly pick up on how this stuff fits into Nissa, gaining a red smile and going into the Weirwood net. Especially when you look at Stoneheart losing her ability to speak. I mean, that makes it pretty clear. So, yeah, great job on that. Sanrixian, why don't you give Melanie a compliment? I know you liked that video too.
Oh, I love Melanie so much. She knows how much I love her. I have a Melanie handmade crocheted dragon. What did we name him, Mel? Like small thorax or something?
I think it was small thorax.
Yeah. Very, very cute. We hung out at Ice and Fire Con together and bonded, and she's a brilliant woman, and I actually got to read this essay as it was, or the Silenced Women essay as it was in progress. And yeah, I mean, it's just brilliant. She's brilliant. She'll make many more great videos, I'm sure. So you guys should subscribe to her channel for sure.
You guys are making me blush. Oh, geez.
Yeah, and Bernie points out that your wig is about 1,000 times better than my wig, to which I readily agree. My costumes are 100% Party City. This is my $8 Vikings hat. This is my $12 wig. That's how I roll, guys. I wouldn't call it cosplay. It's just my LMLing. But we do have one more Sanrixian masterpiece that I whipped up, and this one is the one that Sanrixian's a little nervous about. I haven't showed it to her. I warned her that it was going to be ridiculous. So let's go ahead and shock and appall the senses.
I need to
with.
move the mic.
So you guys know, you know, we got those children of the forest, and I was looking a little more closely at these children of the forest, and I noticed something strange with one of them. If you look a little closer here, up on the right. Oh, who's that? Wait a minute.
Oh my God, I'm dying. That's hilarious.
What would my children of the forest name be?
I don't know. We'll have to. We'll give that one to the chat.
The chat, and it's just not like Leaf. On theme of Leaf.
I think you look like the most pleasant child of the forest in that scenario.
Oh, for sure.
Lines up with your personality quite well.
You know, I might. This chick is kind of intriguing here. The third one from the right. You know, I might like, you know, talk to her for a minute. But yeah, this chick here next to her, in between Sanri and her, is very terrifying. She has ill intentions.
This is wonderful. Thank you.
I think I coaxed a super chat out of Quinn with that one. He sent in a super chat, and Steven Stark also sent in the ritual 666 super chat. Thank you, Steven Stark, who says, "Take me to church for Starry Wisdom Sunday." Yes, yes.
Take me to church.
Okay, I'll go ahead and take this down. Oh boy, yes. So that wasn't too bad, was it, Mallory?
Oh, that was better than I could have ever hoped. Thank you. I mean, just to be completely honest and fair, I photoshopped my face onto a chicken thigh and spun it in 180 degrees, and I send that out to all of my coworkers daily. So
nice.
No shame ever if you want to Photoshop me into things. Go for it.
Yeah, well, I downloaded several pictures of you since we're Facebook friends. I have access to secret pictures nobody else does, or at least your Twitteros crew doesn't. And you know what's funny is I tried to put your face on the really mean-looking child of the forest, and it totally didn't work. It didn't work at all. It just rejected it. It rejected it. And then I used a different picture and put you on that one. I was like, oh, this is coming together.
Sanri is too nice to be the mean child of the forest.
It wouldn't work. It just wouldn't work.
You guys are totally killing my total badass vibe.
Well, happy birthday, Sanrixian. You do a lot for everyone in the community, myself and Joe Magician and everybody else. And I know we all treasure you. So we're happy to make you feel special today. And yeah. So and Lady Shar hit you up with some great of her starry profile pictures too. So
yeah, I feel super, super just loved, and it's an awesome day. I'm going to try to create some awesome art. Thanks, Steven, for the ritual super chat. I can now work my black magic. I mean,
excellent. The summoning circle is complete.
The circle is closed.
We got the yellow vitamin water where all the rituals are crossed. So somebody tell me how the Vikings are doing. Are we still winning? I'm not watching. Anyways, all right. It's about time to get this started. Folks, this is a new episode. This is new shit right here. We're going back to the Weirwood Compendium because, you know, this was going to be Signs and Portals material. But I found that it was really such a nice coda to the Grey King and the Sea Dragon and all the Weirwood Compendium ideas. Oh, nice. 24-13 Vikings. Sweet. That sounds good. Yeah, with our defense, that's pretty much That's a very high win probability, I would say. In any case, Weirwood Compendium ideas feature prominently in this episode. And so what it's going to do is sort of seal up the Weirwood Compendium and then hand off the baton back to Signs and Portals. We're going to have an episode this week, and then we're going to have another episode next week, another new episode back to back. Typical story. They started as one episode. It was way too long. I split it in half. So we're going to get 2 shorter episodes, one this week and one next week. And that will fully take us into the depths of the Green Sea and the Weirwood Net and all that stuff. So, A Green Seer Dragon is the name of Weirwood Compendium 5. Hello, friends, patrons, supporters, and myth heads of the Starry Host. It is I, Lucifer means Lightbringer, and I welcome you to Weirwood Compendium 5. Today's general topic is Azor Ahai gaining access to the Weirwood Net, and though we've talked about this before, today we'll be saddling up the Green Dragon and riding deeper into the net than ever before. We're going to follow up on Weirwood Compendium 1, the Grey King and the Sea Dragon, and make a bit more sense of the Ironborn mythology that we went deep on in that episode. The Green Dragon symbolism we will explore today will reinforce the idea of Azor Ahai as one who gained access to the Weirwood hive mind, and it will build on the symbolism of the Storm God's Thunderbolt, the fiery and wrathful Sea Dragon, the Grey King's Weirwood boat, Weirwood submarine, and his mermaid wife, and all the rest. Best of all, following the trail of the Green Dragon will eventually lead us under the sea itself, where we'll discover a fantastic new symbolic metaphor that unravels quite a bit about the Weirwoods and the Green Seers. To really get the most out of this episode, you should definitely have already read or listened to Weirwood Compendium 1 through 4, as well as the 3 Weirwood Goddess episodes. If it's been a long time since you've listened to the first 4 Weirwood Compendium episodes, I'd probably recommend re-listening to those before doing this one, or right after listening to this one if you're listening live, as we will be drawing heavily from all that stuff. It's also not a bad idea to listen to the first 2 Signs and Portals episodes if you have not done so. As you may have noticed, I've been droning on and on about this thing called the Fire of the Gods all throughout the Weirwood Compendium and probably elsewhere. It's kind of the main theme which unites the Grey King and the Azor Ahai myths, a Luciferian or Promethean pursuit of the fire of the gods. This fire seems to take 2 forms in A Song of Ice and Fire: the moon meteors, of course, and the power of the Weirwoods. The Grey King mythology, again and again, sends us the message that the Grey King possessed both of these. When we discovered that there are burning ash tree symbols, meaning Weirwood symbols, at every scene that depicts the destruction of the moon and the forging of Lightbringer, in a grove of ash, that was another big clue about a link between the Weirwood Net and Azor Ahai. The inescapable conclusion here is that there is some connection between these 2 forms of the fire of the gods, between the moon meteors falling to Earth and man gaining access to the Weirwood Net. A connection between Azor Ahai's blood magic ritual with Nissa Nissa and the idea of Azor Ahai becoming a fiery green seer who enters the Weirwood Net, quite possibly by force. To put it simply, the myths of Grey King and Azor Ahai both have them calling down the meteor fire from heaven, and through explorations of their symbolism, we've discovered that they both seem to be green seers, or something. I always add a little caveat there because I'm by no means sure that we're talking about the standard sort of green seer. What I'm seeing is Azor Ahai's blood magic ritual with Nissa Nissa, the Weirwood goddess, or rather, what I see is that Azor Ahai's blood magic ritual with Nissa Nissa, the Weirwood goddess, seems to have permanently altered the Weirwoods in such a way as to allow mankind access to the hive mind collective consciousness that we refer to as the Weirwood Net. Azor Ahai / the Grey King may have been the first human green seer or the first of a new kind of green seer. As we know, obtaining the fire of the gods always comes with a cost. Indeed, in Martin's world, all magic comes with a cost. And to be honest, and I've said this before, I think Martin is really more interested in exploring and writing about the cost of magic than the glory of magic itself. Azor Ahai seems to have underwent transformation, most likely an actual death transformation, as we've seen in past episodes. And the Grey King, who lived for 1,000 years and became as gray as a corpse, almost certainly underwent transformation through his possession of the fire of the storm god and the sea dragon, however many different things that concept may refer to. One thing is quite clear. Possessing the living fire of the gods will always change you irrevocably, for better or for worse. With both Azor Ahai and the Grey King, this transformation process seems to have been initially triggered by the moon meteors, the more literal manifestation of the fire of the gods. Azor Ahai represents the sun, which was turned dark by the smoke of the meteor impacts, and in the legend itself, Azor Ahai supposedly becomes a hero and forges Lightbringer when the moon cracks. In the Grey King myth, it's the thunderbolt which sets the tree on fire, and if the burning tree represents the Weirwoods and the thunderbolt represents the meteor fire from heaven, then we're left with the idea that the meteor impact had some effect on the Weirwoods, and that it enabled the Grey King to obtain the divine fire of heaven. Most of all, the burning tree represents the Weirwoods in an activated state, which can transfer that fire of the gods to mankind. We know that to attain this Weirwood fire, the living fire of Naga, the Green Seer must join himself to the tree. So really, we can say that the burning tree in the Grey King myth actually represents the tree joined to the Green Seer. That's why we have trees with hands and faces, and people who turn into trees. It's a symbiotic relationship which flows both ways. And somehow it was set on fire. All right, that's our introduction section. Getting ready for our next section. Quick check-in with Sanrixian. How you doing there?
Pretty good. I'm drawing a sea dragon, and
Nice.
the chat has dubbed me Doodle Bug, but I've decided it's going to be Doodle Bud. Wink.
Doodle Bud. Well, that sounds more like a Children of the Forest name.
Yes.
Because all the Children of the Forest, or not all the Children of the Forest, but almost all the wildling women are named after plants and animals, and I have to think that that's influenced by the Children of the Forest looking like plants and animals. But
Oh, yes.
what do you think, Melanie?
Doodlebud, very appropriate. I noticed that Bernie and Steven Stark are busy preparing for 420, so
Oh, is that
Is it?
very
No.
appropriate.
Oh, we got plenty of time. We got 42 minutes here.
We don't want to jump,
42 minutes.
but it's 420 somewhere, right?
Yeah, well, 42 minutes if you add a zero is 420.
What?
Wah, wah, wah.
You really got to watch Disenchantment.
What's Disenchantment?
It is a Netflix series with a little tiny demon named Lucy
Oh,
that
that
I've been
one.
yelling about. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, right.
There's a scene where he tells some elves that he's smoking. They're like, "What kind of candy cigarette is this?" And he's like, Twinkletown Gigglebud. And then they out it as what is it? Dirttown Ditchweed or something. Dreamland Ditchweed.
Why aren't you Doodletown Gigglebud?
That's perfect.
SKG Anno says that it's almost 420 in Denmark, so it is almost 420 somewhere.
There we go.
Well, it's almost 420 in the East Coast, but like I said, we've got 41 minutes to go. So
We got time. Let's carry on.
Yes, we are carrying on. Thanks, Sanrixian. You're the one telling me to stay on target. That's not good. So I'm actually just pulling up my patron names here so I can honor some folks. Let's see where we left off last time. Yes. Here we are. Okay. Here comes the flamenco music at a hopefully manageable volume. Hey, are you going to Burning Man? This section is sponsored by Sir Dionysus of House Galadon, wielder of the milk-glass blade, the Just Made, earthly avatar of Heavenly House Virgo and Libra. Turn the Elf, tavern keep of the Wine Spring Inn, master of the Abyss, earthly avatar of Heavenly House Cancer. And Sarah Stark of the Wolf's Blood, shining hand of Facephoria, and earthly avatar of the Heavenly House Sagittarius. And, oh, who's this? MelanieLot7, aka the Child of the Forest known as Feathercrow, the Weircat Dryad, earthly avatar of Heavenly House Capricorn. So that's what you could do. You could draw Melanie as a Child of the Forest. I should have photoshopped her in there too, I guess, since she's the Weircat Dryad, huh?
Can you make her the one next to me?
The angry one?
Yes. Can you fix it with her beautiful face?
I'll see if I can. I'll have to dig around for some good photos of MelanieLot7 with or without her consent. Oh, you have some good ones. Okay, cool. We don't even need her. This is great.
She's look at her face.
She's
I'm
just
the worst.
she clearly doesn't trust herself to take herself off mute. That's probably good. Raven Salix, by the way, I saw you kicked a couple of questions in the chat here. I'll just, by the way, guys, since this is a shorter episode, we will have a little time for some chat at the end of the episode. So if you have questions that pop up, jot them down or something, so you can throw them back at me when we're done, because this isn't going to be terribly long on the scripted portion.
If you want to actually at me in the chat, folks, I'll collect them and put them in our group chat in our Hangout, Lucy. Then you can see them.
Oh, how helpful. Thank you, Hand
Yes.
the Dragon.
Yes. Pick that up from Kyle.
And if someone could tell me when the Vikings' victory is sealed up, I would appreciate that. All right, so this section title is, Hey, are you going to Burning Man? Because I love Les Claypool. And if you get that joke, good on you. All right. Hey, are you going to Burning Man? So that brings us to the point where we left off at the end of the Grey King and the Sea Dragon episode, where we were talking about the symbol of the burning tree and discussing scenes where, right smack in the middle of Lightbringer forging metaphors, we seem to have fiery sorcerers waking from burning wood and burning trees. We looked back over many of the most prominent Lightbringer forging scenes in the books, and we found that indeed burning wood seems to pretty consistently trigger flames, which are described as either fiery dancers or fiery sorcerers. Just as I interpret the burning tree as a weirwood joined to a green seer, I interpret these fiery sorcerers that wake from the burning wood as representing green seers who have undergone some sort of fiery transformation and bonded with the weirwood tree. They are two different ways of getting at the same idea: a fiery sorcerer merged with a tree, or a tree that looks like a sorcerer. Because these fiery sorcerers and dancers always appear right when Lightbringer is forged, we can deduce that they are, of course, an important part of the larger Lightbringer picture. And all that fits very well with the idea that the storm god's thunderbolt was a moon meteor which somehow created the burning tree, or perhaps we might say the burning tree sorcerer. The hallmark of all these fiery sorcerers and dancers, awoken, the hallmark of all these fiery sorcerers and dancers awoken from trees are the robes of red, yellow, and orange fire, and sometimes smoky cloaks. They all seem to model the clothing of the red priests of R'hllor and priestesses of R'hllor, who are, of course, actual fire sorcerers, who dress in red, yellow, and orange attire designed to look like writhing flames, with some going so far as to tattoo their entire faces with masks of flame. Melisandre, in particular, is always described in these terms, with robes, hair, and even eyes that look like flame. And indeed, Melisandre is actually undergoing some kind of real transformation where she's no longer sustained by sleep or food, but instead by the power of R'hllor, which means fire magic. In other words, there appears to be a literal truth behind the idea of a sorcerer who is fire made flesh, which is what all of these scenes clearly imply. Listing in brief, those scenes were the alchemical wedding scene in A Game of Thrones, #1, where Daenerys woke her dragons. We got both the fiery dancers and the sorcerers in that one. First off, it said that the flames writhed before her like the woman who had danced at her wedding, whirling and singing and spinning their yellow and orange and crimson veils, fearsome to behold, yet lovely, so lovely, alive with heat. And then I forgot to silence my phone, and it rang.
It sounds like Twinkletown.
Twinkletown. Take me down to Twinkletown.
That's the melody to Twinkletown.
It is. All right. So we've got the fiery sorcerers and the fiery dancers at her wedding. And right after she sees them, she then speaks of flames which appeared, each one a sorcerer robed in yellow and orange and scarlet, swirling long, smoky cloaks. We also had logs exploding as the fire touched their secret hearts, with the idea being that logs with hearts and secrets evoke heart trees, and being touched with fire suggests the burning tree of the Grey King myth, which again alludes to weirwood trees. That tree was set ablaze by the thunderbolt, which I claim to be a meteor dragon, and accordingly, the secret hearts of the logs in Drogo's pyre are touched by the fire right at the moment that one of the dragon's eggs, the green one, as a matter of fact, cracked open with a sound loud and sharp as thunder. So we've got a thunder dragon touching the secret hearts of the logs. I just love that. Last but not least in that scene, Dany saw the reborn spirit of Drogo rising through the flames, and he was wearing the familiar fiery regalia.
His clothing took fire, and for an instant the cowl was clad in wisps of floating orange silk and tendrils of curling smoke, gray and greasy.
Oh man, are we going to have MelanieLot7 reading all the quotes on this entire episode? We are spoiled. Melanie, I love your reading voice. You are wonderful. You did Joe Magician's last video, right?
I did, yeah. I love reading out loud, so I'm ready for it.
Nice, nice. Yes, you were all about it when I asked you to come on. So thanks very much. And we are, of course, honored. So there we have it. We have the Khal Drogo. He's clad in wisps of floating orange silk and tendrils of curling greasy gray smoke. And this is highly significant as Drogo's reborn spirit, which Dany associates with the Red Comet, remember, is a fairly straightforward manifestation of the reborn Solar King. And that's exactly who I believe the fiery sorcerer woken from the burning tree is. First and foremost, this is Azor Ahai being reborn through the Weirwoods. All right, so number 2 was the burning of the 7 at Dragonstone in A Clash of Kings, where Mel and Stannis do their little Lightbringer reenactment. The morning air was dark with the smoke of burning gods, meaning that this bonfire is literally the fire of the gods. Yes. And then it says, the burning gods cast a pretty light, wreathed in their robes of shifting flame, red and orange and yellow, dun dun dun. Those burning gods were the wooden ones, made from the old wood of the masts of the ships, which first brought the Targaryens to Dragonstone. Ships owned by Targaryens are dragon ships, and since the sea dragon's bones actually turned out to be a Weirwood ship, we can see all dragon boats as symbols of the sea dragon, especially when they catch on fire. The fact that they are not only burning wooden ships, but burning wooden gods spells out the idea that they possess the fire of the gods, as the sea dragon and the burning tree of the Grey King mythology do. And indeed, the burning statues of the 7 are made from masts, and thus also symbolize trees, burning trees, like the one in the Grey King myth, which really refers to Weirwoods. To make matters worse, Stannis literally pulls Lightbringer from the burning wooden sea dragon gods, cluing us into the idea that all of this is tied to Azor Ahai and Lightbringer, the other form of the fire of the gods besides the Weirwood net. These first 2 scenes, the alchemical wedding and the burning of the 7 on Dragonstone, are probably the most vivid and complete Lightbringer forging metaphor scenes in the series to date, and they both contain clear depictions of our fire sorcerers emerging from burning wood. Yes, and by the way, those of you in the chat, Bale the Bard in the chat is the same person who was formerly known as Nienna the Wise, aka Gretchen Ellis. That's her exciting new moniker, Bale the Bard. And of course, it's B-A-apostrophe-A-L, so it's extra clever. Oh yes, very nice. Scene number 3 is Arya, Yoren, and the Night's Watch recruits in the abandoned holdfast near Harrenhal, besieged by Amory Lorch. Sir Amory Lorch, I guess we should give him his titles. The soldiers were depicted as having fiery armor and swords, while the flames themselves were personified as people, dragons, fiery fingers, fiery tongues, and the like. The payoff line was...
Arya saw a tree consumed, the flames creeping across its branches until it stood in the night in robes of living orange.
That is a good one. And thank you, Stephiz, for the super chat, as well as Crowfood's daughter, who sent one in a little earlier. Thanks, guys. So obviously, that's a tasty one, because it literally gives us the burning tree dressed as a fire sorcerer, with the fiery soldiers in this scene reinforcing the idea of people made of fire. Harrenhal itself is a tremendous symbol of the destroyed second moon, as I've mentioned a few times. It's a black stone burnt by dragonfire, and it was built by someone with black blood, as Harren's line was called. And it's currently haunted by fiery ghosts, as we saw in the Weirwood Goddess series. Although I am going to come back to Harrenhal. There's more stuff to mine there. Additionally, because Black Harren cut down Weirwoods to make the rafters and beams of Harrenhal, when Aegon the Conqueror set fire to the place with Balerion's black fire, we did actually have burning Weirwood symbolism going on. The God's Eye, right by Harrenhal, is an even more amazing bundle of symbolism, which leads us to the Eye of Odin and thus to Green Seers, So the location of this burning tree wearing the robes of fire is highly significant in its own right. All right, scene number 4 was Jon and Qhorin Halfhand and the Frostfangs in A Clash of Kings, right before they're caught by the wildlings and Jon is forced to kill Qhorin.
Jon went to cut more branches, snapping each one in two before tossing it into the flames. The tree had been dead a long time, but it seemed to live again in the fire, as fiery dancers woke within each stick of wood to whirl and spin in their glowing gowns of yellow, red, and orange.
Awesome. And hey, Melanie, by the way, I forgot to ask you before we were rolling, but would you be so good as to, if you have not already, turn on some sort of recorder so that you are recording the quotes that you're reading so you don't have to redo them all afterwards, and send them to me so they can be in the permanent podcast version of this episode. So if you've got Audacity or whatever you use, just launch it and give it a record. And yes, there we go. So thank you once again for that reading. And once again, we have fiery dancers waking from the sticks of wood to whirl and spin. And of course, the tree had been dead a long time, which is a nice one. So this quote is especially notable for its flagrant incorporation of resurrection into the mix. The tree had been dead a long time, but seemed to live again in the fire. A resurrected fire sorcerer may be exactly how we're supposed to think of Azor Ahai, one who wakes from a burning tree, or perhaps we might say that he lives again by merging with the symbolic burning tree known as the Weirwood. By the way, if Jon is resurrected on a Weirwood funeral pyre in the Winds of Winter, well, that sure would be neato, wouldn't it? That's a little bit of tinfoil for you. I mean, after all, the other time that we see a ranger burned on a pyre, this happens.
Sam was red-eyed and sick from the smoke. When he looked at the fire, he thought he saw Bannon sitting up, his hands coiling into fists, as if to fight off the flames that were consuming him. But it was only for an instant, before the swirling smoke hid all.
That's kind of the ultimate point of the burning people and the sorcerers emerging from these pyres. Sure, one of them is Azor Ahai, but the rest are probably the last heroes group of Green Zombie Night's Watchmen, who are most likely fire undead people similar to Beric, or similar to how Jon will be after he's resurrected. You'll hopefully remember the important parallels between Beric Dondarrion, the burning undead scarecrow, and the burning scarecrow Night's Watch brothers. Oh man, let me just read that again. Hopefully, you will remember the important parallels between Beric Dondarrion, the burning undead scarecrow, and the burning scarecrow Night's Watch brothers in Jon's Azor Ahai dream, as that was one of the big clues that the last hero's companions are meant to be fiery undead people, what George R.R. Martin has called firewights. Their resurrection also seems to have something to do with weirwoods, or with being skin changers like Jon, hence the green zombies theory. So it makes a lot of sense to associate this group of fiery people who emerge from the burning trees we see at the Lightbringer forging scenes with our Green Zombie Night's Watch brothers. In fact, the burning scarecrow brothers are themselves tremendous symbols of burning tree people. They're made of wicker and straw, and they're mounted on a vertical wooden pole like a tree trunk. When they're set on fire, they become a burning tree person wearing robes of fire, very like Arya's burning tree that wears robes of living fire. So those are our first 4 examples of symbolic fiery sorcerers, with the 5th one being Moon Dancer, the green dragon, whom we're going to talk about quite a bit in just a minute. But wouldn't you know it, since I wrote this essay, I found more examples of the phenomenon. That's right, there's always more. One of them came at Daznak's pit, where Dany mounts Drogon for the first time and flies away from a pit of fire and blood and death. This scene is in many ways a mirror to the alchemical wedding, so it figures to see fiery sorcerers here. In fact, Dany's recollection of Daznak's begins with a comparison to the alchemical wedding. She's thinking back to the moment of walking into Drogo's pyre, and it says,
"The fire burned away my hair, but elsewise it did not touch me. It had been the same in Daznak's pit. That much she could recall, though much of what followed was a haze. So many people screaming and shoving."
And then skipping forward a few lines, it says,
"She remembered the dragon twisting beneath her, shuddering at the impacts, as she tried desperately to cling to his scaled back. The wounds were smoking. Dany saw one of the bolts burst into sudden flame. Another fell away, shaken loose by the beating of his wings. Below, she saw men whirling, wreathed in flame, hands up in the air as if caught in the throes of some mad dance.
It's the standard formula. A dragon hatches as our incarnation of Lightbringer being forged, and at the scene we find a lot of death, fire, blood, and of course, people wreathed in flame and doing some sort of shamanic mad dance. That's a nice one. We got the dancing and the fiery robes. And you may also notice that the dragon is struck by wooden bolts from a crossbow, which smoke and burst into flame, evoking the thunderbolt and the burning tree imagery. Perhaps even better than Daznak's pit, yes, I found a little something about burning tree dragons, which I think fits very well here. All right, get ready for a little Aegon the Unworthy talk, everyone. This is going to be good. The World of Ice and Fire tells us about one of the follies of King Aegon V Targaryen, also known as Aegon the Unworthy, who apparently fancied himself as some sort of Westerosi Leonardo da Vinci, inventing all sorts of crazy contraptions and whatnots and thingamajigs. In an effort to conquer Dorne, which was still unconquered in his day, Aegon the Unworthy commanded his pyromancers to build me dragons, which the World of Ice and Fire describes as wood and iron monstrosities fitted with pumps that shot jets of wildfire. His foolish plan was to bring them down the Boneway to attack Dorne. But
I ain't a dragon. I ain't no dragon.
They did not. Oh,
sorry.
Are you ready?
Are you done telling jokes, Sanri? Are you done?
They did not come even that far, however, for the first of the dragons went up in flames in the Kingwood, far from the Boneway. Soon all 7 were burning. Hundreds of men burned in those fires, along with almost a quarter of the Kingswood.
So although we do not have burning sorcerers, we do have burning men, burning wooden dragons, and burning trees in the Kingswood. The line about soon all 7 were burning is very, very similar to the phrasing in the burning of the 7 seen on Dragonstone, where the things being burnt were also wooden dragons, after a fashion, being 7 wooden gods made from the massive Targaryen ships, which are wooden dragons and therefore sea dragon symbols. The phrase Kingswood suggests that the burning trees belong to a king, and this in turn makes us think of the Grey King's burning tree. It's a burning tree that belongs to a king. Going further, the trees in the Kingswood belong to a dragon king, just as the Grey King is a sea dragon king and quite possibly Azor Ahai himself, or his son or brother or cousin or uncle or nephew or something. Essentially, don't forget bastard brother. Essentially, we have the same idea presented twice, side by side. The Dragon King's trees and the Dragon King's wooden dragons are burning together, giving us a reference to both Grey King fire myths, the sea dragon and the burning tree. What makes all of this corroboration even more strong, and actually let me describe a super chat before I forget. Looks like Chow AJ says, yay, more examples. Thanks. Thank you very much. The super chats are working. So what makes all of these corroborations what makes all of this corroborate even more strongly to the Grey King myths is that the whole wooden dragon idea, which gave us a forest full of burning trees, was actually Aegon the Unworthy's second attempt to invade Dorne. And his first attempt also parallels both Grey King fire myths. Yes, it's true. It comes in the paragraph prior to the last one we pulled from the World of Ice and Fire.
Fortunately for the realm, the king's plans to invade Dorne in 174 AC proved a complete failure. Though his grace built a huge fleet, thinking to succeed as Daron the young dragon had done, it was broken and scattered by storms on its way to Dorne.
In other words, we have sea dragons in the form of ships owned by Targaryens, a reference to the idea of the sea dragon and the specific theory that the bones of the sea dragon Naga are actually the fossilized remains of a Weirwood boat. Additionally, the wooden sea dragons were destroyed by storms, which serves as a sort of more vague reference to the other Grey King myth, that of the storm god's thunderbolt, which set the tree on fire. So the thunderbolt is destroying the sea dragon, if you will, setting the boat on fire, or at least sending them to the bottom of the ocean, however that happened. Last but not least, the idea of a dragon trying to attack Dorne, specifically with these various symbols of the sea dragon and the thunderbolt, works as a parallel to the idea of the hammer of the waters moon meteor striking Dorne. It's very like the time when Moon Maiden Marcella Baratheon / Lannister is sent down to Sunspear with ships named King Robert's Hammer and Lion Star, a symbolic depiction of Moon Maiden's fiery stars and Storm King hammers falling on the arm of Dorne. So there's one last set of parallels between Aegon the Unworthy and the Grey King. The Grey King was said to have left behind 100 sons who engaged in an orgy of kinslaying until only 16 remained, just as Aegon the Unworthy famously legitimized his bastards on his deathbed, and in doing so doomed the realm to 5 generations of Blackfire rebellions, which certainly qualify as orgies of kinslaying and tragedy. At the end of his life, Aegon the Unworthy even sounds a bit like a green seer chained up to the weirwood roots.
He was grossly fat, barely able to walk, and some wondered how his last mistress, Saranai of Lys, the mother of Shiera Seastar, could ever have withstood his embraces. The king himself died a horrible death, his body so swollen and obese that he could no longer lift himself from his couch, his limbs rotting and crawling with flesh worms.
Ew, gross. I know. But consider the symbolism here. Aegon the Unworthy is actually Bloodraven's father, of course, and Bloodraven's mother is mentioned here as well. That's Shiera Seastar. Now, besides the grossly fat thing, Aegon seems to be symbolizing a green seer like Bloodraven. At the end, he cannot leave his couch, just as a green seer cannot leave his throne. And the flesh worms crawling through his rotting limbs are a call out to the white weirwood roots that pierce Bloodraven's rotting limbs, which Bran describes as graveworms, or Bran describes the weirwood roots as graveworms. So it gives you the idea of worms piercing and crawling through Bloodraven's flesh. I know, gross, but there it is. It's a very strong symbolic likeness. Now, all of this, the parallels to the Green Seer chained to the throne, the simulation of the Grey King myths and his attacks on Dorne, they seem to act as a corroboration that the Grey King was indeed a dragon person, which is another way of saying that the Grey King is either Azor Ahai or one of his kind. And yes, don't forget, just as I believe that Azor Ahai's Lightbringer was a black sword, and just as the ancient Ironborn were said to wield sorcerous, soul-drinking black weapons, King Aegon the Wormy possessed the Targaryen ancestral sword Blackfire, a black magical sword in its own right, which is an important symbolic representation of Lightbringer. Aegon the Unworthy also gave birth to the line of rebel dragons known as Blackfires when he gave the Blackfire sword to Daemon Waters, who then became Daemon Blackfire, meaning he had one usurper son with a Blackfire sword and another son who was a dragon-blooded green seer who commanded the Night's Watch. That's a lot of symbolism, but let's keep moving. We'll come back to Aegon the Unworthy in the Q&A afterwards. See what else we can find. All right, so there was one other example of a fiery being. I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, I screwed that up. Sorry, guys. So Shiera Seastar was Bloodraven's lover, not his mother. His mother was Melissa Blackwood. And Shiera Seastar was the daughter of Saranai with Lys. So, correction, I screwed that up. Sorry. But it didn't change my point. It's just what you call a factual error. Thanks for fixing that, though, guys. I'll get that straightened out on the script here. Very good. All right, so let's keep moving. There was one other example of a fiery being wearing fiery robes from the Grey King and the Sea Dragon episode, and that, of course, is the one we're going to expand on the most. It wasn't a bonfire or a burning tree which looks human. Instead, it was a green dancer, moon dancer. Or was a green dragon, moon dancer. I'm all thrown off. It was a green dragon, moon dancer. During one of the epic dragon-on-dragon battles in the Targaryen Civil War, known as the Dance of the Dragons, the dragons Moon Dancer and Sunfire collided in the skies over Dragonstone in a wonderful demonstration of the moon wandering too close to the sun and sun and moon merge as one aspects of the Lightbringer fable. Moon Dancer and Sunfire slam into each other violently, then tumble from the sky, burning and bleeding like the bleeding stars of fire which the dragons represent. Their flames light up the sky like a, quote, second sun, and Moon Dancer becomes robed in fire and smoke, which is, of course, the trademark garb of the dancing fire sorcerers. Moondancer only becomes robed in fire after she kisses the sun and drinks its fire. The name of the dragon, Sunfire, literally spells this out. So this is really a pretty exact and detailed depiction of the chain of events of Lightbringer's forging. Sean E., who is a patron of mythical astronomy, pipes in to say 15-minute warning, which is now 13-minute warning. Thanks, Sean. Appreciate that. And thanks for the super chats. Since we looked at this scene in Weirwood Compendium 1, we've discovered the archetype of the Weirwood goddess, who's always marked by the, quote, Weirwood stigmata, which makes her look like a weirwood tree. Bloody hands, bloody mouth, or red smile throat wound, bloody or red eyes, and bloody or red hair. We can see that our green moon dancing dragon is blind and bloody as she joins Sunfire in a death grip during their fall. In other words, she's a moon dragon figure getting Weirwood stigmata in the moment that she joins with the solar dragon, just like Thistle getting the stigmata when Verimir's spirit enters her body. And you'll remember that there was a line about Thistle doing some sort of mad dance there as well. This is more confirmation of the idea that the meteors set the Weirwood net on fire, in a manner of speaking, by altering them so that man could enter. Because our Weirwood goddesses always gain their bloody faces when the fiery green seer spirit enters them. Moondancer fairly literally drinks the fire of Sunfire and then gains the stigmata. Once again, we see that the Weirwood tree symbol is created when two things merge together, the sun and the moon, or the green spear spirit and the tree. The name Moondancer specifically calls out to the fiery dancers which appear in the flames during Jon and Dany's wood-burning scenes that we just discussed, and conveniently links them to the moon which cracked from the heat of the sun. And once again, the fiery sorcerer seems to be Azor Ahai reborn in this scene. Azor Ahai Sr. is Sunfire, Nissa Nissa is Moondancer, but Azor Ahai reborn is the child of both, and is thus represented by their merging, which lights up the sky like a second sun. That would be the sun's son, like Quentin Martell as the son of Dorne. Accordingly, the post-collision Sunfire and Moondancer both show us Azor Ahai reborn symbolism after they collide. Sunfire has one eye torn out, giving him one-eyed Odin and Bloodraven symbolism, and he also has a severe neck wound where Moondancer bit him, simulating the hanging wound of Odin, which we also see on Beric and a few others. As for Moondancer, well, she's a fiery, dancing green dragon born of the sun and moon, manifesting Weirwood stigmata, who's wearing the signature fiery robes of the fiery sorcerers that we've been following. The stigmata and the fiery robes both imply transformed Moondancer as entering the Weirwood net. Now, given the presence of this green seer symbolism, the fact that the dragon is green does seem like it might be a clue about a dragon person who is a green seer. I introduced this green dragon idea in the Grey King episode, but let's follow up on it now and take a look at the green dragon that we have in the main story, Rhaegal, as well as a few other green dragon ideas, and see if there are any clues about green seer dragon people. Spoiler alert, there are such clues, as you might expect. The trail of the green dragon slithers this way and that, so we'll be side branching into topics such as Quentin the Dragon Tamer, the Crannog Men, and extinct houses of the Riverlands. And next week, the Pureborn of Karth. We'll also be talking about Dany's unfortunate son, Rhaego, and we'll even return to the familiar scene of the alchemical wedding to harvest yet more symbolic gold. We might even find ourselves lost in a dark forest of the mind if we're not careful. All right, that is the end of that section. How am I doing, MelanieLot7? What do you think so far?
Fantastic so far. I think it's so interesting. I love the idea of the trees catching fire and the fact that sometimes they're not actually trees. I really enjoyed the parallel between the tree masts that are burned, the ones that are carved in the image of the seven. And I don't know if you noticed it, but they're also described as old wood, just like the wood in the Quarren half-hand example. They're both old wood that comes to life.
Totally, yeah. So that's one of the deeper levels of meaning that I had been meaning to follow up on. When it says the tree had been dead a long time, it almost seems like when Azor Ahai went into the Weirwood net, he awakened some sort of spirit that then came out. And I think it's possible that might be an allusion to the others as some sort of weird part of the Weirwood consciousness that was evicted when Azor Ahai went in. But I'm still working on figuring that one out there.
I was also thinking maybe it could be a way of explaining that Azor Ahai is being reborn in that sense.
Yeah, that's like the first basic meaning that I took from it, is that there's a resurrection happening. But the been dead a long time part is what made me wonder if there was something older that was being awakened. You are meddling with the forces of nature. So let's see. We've got Stormy 4400. Niece is requesting some playtime and have to go. Great one as usual. Thank you, Stormy. Thank you. Let's see. Yeah, how are those Vikings doing? Vikings up by 8. San Francisco has the ball. Oh, interception. Nice. Defense always saves us. Sanrixian, what are we doing here?
Oh, well.
Oh, nice.
Burning tree dragons. I'm sorry. You know, it had to happen.
Nice. I left you alone for a long time. Were you what else have you been working on?
1 second, let me fix that spine that was bothering me. All right. You mentioned John getting burned as a way of bringing him back, which I didn't even think about. And then this happened. He has a great butt, so you know it's John.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
I censored it for everybody.
Okay, all right.
And this is Viseria. She's a chimera in her icon, so I drew her as a chimera. Here's a shame cube from which I put myself in as soon as I interrupted you with, "He's a witch, ban him." Got Davos and Ghost and Melisandre hanging out.
This one is definitely Azor Ahai for sure this time. That's awesome.
Deaths.
So this is actually what's going to happen in TWOW.
Yeah, I do think so. I do think that we'll see something similar to the show where we'll get Davos involved and Ghost involved, but it'll be way more spectacular. It'll be more than just combing Boy's hair, giving him a kiss on the forehead. That's for damn sure.
I like the idea of John's hair burning off, and when it grows back, it's white, kind of like how Dany's hair burned off. That would be a really nice echo.
That would be so satisfying.
I was thinking it would just turn white, but
somewhere too.
I like it.
Well, he could be fireproof. We don't know.
Nice.
We'll find out.
So guys, I need to grab something from the other room. So give me like 30 seconds here.
I
feel like that was game show music.
It was.
Nice.
I got
creepy Peter in there somewhere, but not naked. We know that you'll get yelled at. And I'll probably get yelled at too.
What's that? Do I need to yell at somebody?
Shh.
I had to get some fruits of the tree, the eucalyptus tree, also known as Hall's eucalyptus. Soothing vapors, yes. Got to get ready for the 420 break coming up here in 5 minutes. All right. Let me actually roll through the chat here. I've been ignoring you guys. Looks like you're entertaining yourself as usual. Is anybody even listening to me, or are you basically just having fun?
Everybody's listening to you.
Oh, yeah, maybe. I feel like I'm just an excuse for everyone to come and hang out, which, by the way, is fine. That's totally fine. You guys aren't listening.
I have questions in the chat.
Listening to Raven Salix. Of course, by the way, the next episode is going to be pure Ravenous Reader, Under the Sea joy. Like I said, this episode started as a big one, which sort of introduced the Under the Sea halfway through, but we decided to split it in half. So next week will be Ravi's big week. We'll honor Ravenous Reader and draw some Nenimone artwork next week. But
oh man, that's gonna be a fun time.
And everybody's now swearing that they're listening. Okay, cool. Thanks. Wait, is that horn guy saying something? Very good. Very good. Fair enough. Fair enough. Let's see here. All right. Let's queue up some flamenco and read some Patreon names. Do 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 do. Bloop 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 bloop.
See, Melanie, you make noises.
I was gonna say, where's your game show music?
This next section is called A Thunderous Dragon. And it is brought to you by Katharina of the Many Tongues, the Twin Claw, Righteous Sword of the Small Folk, and Earthly Avatar of Heavenly House Gemini. Durndurnden, the Redfish Bluefish, Earthly Avatar of Heavenly House Pisces, whose eyes are ruby and sapphire, and whose sword is pale fire. Sir Dale the Winged Fist, the last scion of House Mud, and captain of the dread ship Black Squirrel. And Sir Stoyles of Long Branch, seeker of the Pale Blood. There we go. All right. Do 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 do. And we're back. A Thunderous Dragon. The first clue about green dragons and fiery green seers actually comes at the alchemical wedding, and I just mentioned it. It was the green egg, Rhaegal's egg, which cracked as loud and sharp as thunder. This creates a potential parallel between the Thunderbolt burning tree myth and the thunderous awakening of the green dragon. That was also the moment when the fire touched the secret hearts of the burning logs, as we talked about, which again evokes the thunderbolt setting fire to the heart trees of the Weirwood net. Twice in one paragraph, the green dragon's awakening is tied to the thunderbolt and the burning tree, myths which we now understand to refer to mankind gaining access to the Weirwood net. That's a great tip-off that the green dragon is a symbol tied to green seeing and, obviously, dragons. Rhaegal the Green Dragon is named for Mr. Dead Prince Charming himself, Rhaegar Targaryen, as Daenerys tells us in A Clash of Kings.
I would name them for all those the gods have taken. The green one shall be Rhaegal, for my valiant brother who died in the green banks of the Trident.
Rhaegar is, of course, a prime symbol of the black dragon aspect of the Azor Ahai reborn archetype. So the idea of him being reborn as Rhaegal suggests Azor Ahai being reborn as a green dragon, whose awakening is like thunder. Rhaegar was struck down and transformed by the Storm King's hammer, a great analog to the Storm God's thunderbolt, which transformed the Grey King. The idea of a black dragon becoming a green dragon through the Storm God's strike would again seem to suggest that Azor Ahai's calling down the thunderbolt meteor fire may have allowed him access to the Weirwood net. It may have enabled him to become a green seer. Rhaegar's death also parallels the slaying of the sea dragon myth, of course, because Rhaegar is knocked off of his horse, out of the heavens, in other words, and then falls into the River Trident, into the green banks of the River Trident. That's a drowning moon meteor symbol, and his fabled rubies tell the same story, flashing like fire before dropping into the water. The rubies are sometimes pulled out of the water, it should be noted, just as the Ironborn myth implies that they harvested meteor stone from the sea, perhaps in the form of the sea stone chair itself. Setting the oily black chair aside, which is probably really hard to do since it's probably really heavy, the point is that Rhaegar's death acts as the beginning of his symbolic transformation into Rhaegal, the Green Dragon, and it parallels both of the Grey King fire-stealing myths, the Thunderbolt and the slaying of the Sea Dragon. Heck, even the fact that the battle itself happened in the River Trident names it as a sea battle. It's a battle in a river for domination of the Trident, the traditional symbol of the sea god's power. Now, getting back to the naming of Rhaegal the Green Dragon, we should note that this was actually Dany's second attempt at naming someone or something after Rhaegar. The first was her own unborn child, whom she named Rhaego. She was, and by the way, can we get a Poor Rhaego Twitter handle? I mean, if we're going to do Poor Quentin, we should have a Poor Rhaego. Make it happen. Agreed, yes. He was supposed to be the stallion who mounts the world, but was born dead in the tent of dancing shadows instead. Rhaego's symbolism, however, is quite intriguing and parallels that of the green dragon Rhaegal in many ways, which are, of course, suggestive of green seer dragons. The giving of the prophecy of the stallion who mounts the world starts... The giving of the prophecy of the stallion who mounts the world is a big Rhaegal scene, but it starts with Dany. This is her Weirwood stigmata scene. She's eating the heart of the wild stallion, which represents her as the moon eating the comet. or as receiving Azor Ahai's fiery sword, or in the reproduction context, she is receiving the fiery dragon seed of the Solar King. That's what this ceremony is about, creating favorable omens for Rhaego, her unborn child. Check her out as a pregnant moon full of moon blood.
Her handmaids had helped her ready herself for the ceremony. Despite the tender mother's stomach that had afflicted her these past 2 moons, Dany had dined on bowls of half-clotted blood to accustom herself to the taste, and Eerie made her chew strips of dried horseflesh until her jaws were aching.
There's definitely heavy Weirwood stigmata happening.
No steel was permitted within the sacred confines of Vaes Dothrak, beneath the shadow of the Mother of Mountains. She had to rip the heart apart with her teeth and nails. Her stomach roiled and heaved, yet she kept on, her face smeared with the heart's blood that sometimes seemed to explode against her lips.
Ah, it's exploding. That's always a good mythical astronomy tip-off. Yeah, I know it's gross, but think about symbolism and exploding meteors.
It's my birthday. I gotta talk about worms and explosions.
It's going to get worse.
We thought you liked those things.
Yeah. Don't you have a black empty space where they used to have a heart or something? Come on.
Oh, speaking of which, go on.
So Dany is the spitting image of a weirwood tree. Get it? Spitting image. Bloody hands and mouth, devouring raw flesh. Immediately after, her stigmata is spelled out again as she declares herself pregnant, which reemphasizes the horse heart eating as the impregnation of the moon and the weirwoods with Azor Ahai's fire.
And finally it was done. Her cheeks and fingers were sticky as she forced down the last of it. Only then did she turn her eyes back to the old women, the crones of the Dosh Kalim. Kalacha Dothre Miraha, she proclaimed in her best Dothraki. A prince rides inside me. She had practiced the phrase for days with her handmaid Jiki. The oldest of the crones, a bent and shriveled stick of a woman with a single black eye, raised her arms on high. Kalacha Dothrai, she shrieked. The prince is riding.
That was like flawless Dothraki there.
Yeah, that was.
Nice.
That was. Have you been practicing, Melanie?
No, not really.
You're just a natural. That's cool. That's very humble of you. That's cool. So then a deep-throated war horn sounded its low, long note, which gives us the ubiquitous magic horn symbol that we still have to explore fully, but which I have hinted at as being connected to the idea of magic sound in general and Nissanissa's cry that broke the moon. In any case, after the horn blast, we see a terrific example of the rising column of smoke and ash as a weirwood tree symbol that we sketched out in a grove of ash, or that we sketched out in a grove of ash. That always gets me, the double in. The eunuchs who served them threw bundles of dried grass onto the great bronze brazier, and clouds of fragrant smoke rose up toward the moon and the stars. Oh, you know what? This is actually supposed to be a quote, this paragraph, Melanie, and it didn't get highlighted. Do you see it here? The one with the eunuchs? Can you go ahead and give me a dramatic reading of that paragraph?
You got it. The eunuchs who served them threw bundles of dried grasses into a great bronze brazier, and clouds of fragrant smoke rose up toward the moon and the stars. The Dothraki believed the stars were horses made of fire, a great herd that galloped across the sky by night. As the smoke ascended, the chanting died away, and the ancient crone closed her single eye, the better to peer into the future.
Excellent, excellent. Oh, and by the way, I have published some of you guys like to read and listen at the same time. I did publish this right before we went live. Let me just drop the link into the chat. If you like to read along, it's right there. All right. And stop having so much fun with a deep-throated war horn, everybody. Come on, you're better than that. Who are we kidding? No, you're not.
I'm not.
Yeah, nobody is. It's no accident that we get one-eyed Odin symbolism and attempt. It's no accident that we get one-eyed Odin symbolism and an attempt to peer into the future in the same paragraph with the clouds of holy smoke ascending up towards the moon and stars. This is a nod to the burning ash tree / mushroom cloud symbolism that we often see at Lightbringer bonfires. The reference to the smoke rising to the stars and moon kind of seals the deal. This is definitely a ground zero impact zone bonfire, the ones which clouded the sky with smoke during the long night. Together with Dany getting the stigmata and the symbolic impregnation talk here, we can see that this is a great depiction of Nissa Nissa going into the Weirwood net symbolism mixed with Lightbringer forging moon impregnation symbolism. With all that said, then comes the prophecy of the stallion who mounts the world, who is supposed to be Rhaego. The very notion of a stallion who mounts the world should absolutely make us think of Yggdrasil as Odin's horse, since it's a tree which serves as a symbolic horse, which allows Odin to traverse the 9 realms of the universe, which is very like mounting the world. That's astral projection, a sort of flying between the worlds and over the world. The idea of a stallion who mounts the world may well be playing on this, since the Greenseers are already imitating Odin and mounting the Weirwoods in pretty much the exact same way that Odin mounts Yggdrasil. Basically, this is a Rhaego is a Greenseer clue, in other words, or at least Rhaego represents a Greenseer, I guess we should say. And then we get another clue along these lines when the one-eyed crone says, "I have seen his face and heard the thunder of his hooves." That's a great match for Rhaegal's egg, Rhaegal the Green Dragon, that is. That's a great match for Rhaegal the Green Dragon's egg, cracking as loud and sharp as thunder. The arrivals of both Rhaego and Rhaegal are heralded by thunder, in other words. The crone also says that Rhaego will ride as swift as the wind and will be as fierce as a storm, once again evoking the storm god and his thunderbolt. Rhaegal does this too. When Quentin Martell tosses a sheep to Rhaegal in the pit below the Pyramid of Meereen in his mad attempt to steal a dragon, Rhaegal snatches the sheep in midair.
His head snapped round, and from between his jaws a lance of flame erupted. A swirling storm of orange and yellow fire shot through with green.
Rhaego, the stallion who mounts, rides as fierce as a storm, and Rhaegal, the green dragon, belches a firestorm, both of which remind us of the storm god's fire that creates burning trees. Then we have Daenerys Stormborn, who is fire made flesh, and who steps into the firestorm, calling to her children at the alchemical wedding, right after the green egg hatches like thunder and the fire touches those secret wooden hearts. This is the green dragon's egg, and everything here is about storm and thunder. So again, this is the thunderbolt coming from the moon and setting fire to the tree, with Dany herself serving as the fire sorcerer emerging from the burning wood, possessing the fire of the storm. Similarly, Rhaego, the stallion who never was, also manifests clear fire sorcerer symbolism. Basically a round robin of symbolism, as it always is. Although Rhaego never lived outside the womb, we do get a glimpse of what he might have looked like in Dany's Wake the Dragon dream in A Game of Thrones, which she has in that tent with Merry and the dancing shadows as she gives birth to Rhaego.
She could feel the heat inside her, a terrible burning in her womb. Her son was tall and proud, with Drogo's copper skin and her own silver gold hair, violet eyes shaped like almonds. And he smiled for her and began to lift his hand towards her. But when he opened his mouth, the fire poured out. She saw his heart burning through his chest, and in an instant he was gone, consumed like a moth by a candle, turned to ash.
Rhaego, for a moment, takes on the Burning Man persona. Oversized goggles, silver spandex biker shorts, nipple rings, and a bedazzled fedora. Oh, wait, no. Not that Burning Man. I'm talking about Rhaego as a person made of fire, of course. A burning man. Take note of the burning heart, a call out to R'hllor's fiery heart symbol. Rhaego is consumed by fire, implying death, but since we are led to believe that Rhaego's spirit or life force has somehow gone into the dragons or helped to awaken the dragons, only death can pay for life being the operating principle here, we should also see this as a fiery death transformation for Rhaego. He's a burning man that awakens the green dragon or becomes the green dragon. The same idea is implied with the line about Rhaego's being turned to ash. He's an Azor Ahai figure who undergoes a fiery death transformation and ends up inside the Weirwoods, which are the Song of Ice and Fire version of the great ash tree Yggdrasil. See what I mean about building on all the Weirwood Compendium stuff? If you haven't read In a Grove of Ash, you don't know what the hell I'm talking about right now. So hopefully you guys read that one. By the way, if I had to pick my own favorite episode, it might be In a Grove of Ash. That one makes me happy. In any case, Rhaego is going into the Grove of Ash by turning to ash. And after all, the one-eyed crone did peer into the rising smoke of the future and then heard the thunder of Rhaego's hooves, which is almost as if Rhaego was thundering from inside the smoke column, from inside the Weirwood tree, like a green seer, calling down thunder, and so forth. So, Rhaego is a dragon made of fire, and his namesake Rhaegar Targaryen also happens to be associated with the idea of a burning man too, via his appearance in that very same Wake the Dragon dream where Dany saw Rhaego consumed by fire.
And she saw her brother Rhaegar, mounted on a stallion as black as his armor. Fire glimmered red through the eye slit of his helm.
I understand that I temporarily replaced myself with my logo. I'm sorry, was that creepy? Was that like the great eye speaking to you? I'll go back to my Viking self. It's a little more disarming with the humor. So there we go. Anyways, Dany lifts the visor of his helm, and a moment later to discover only her own face. One more time. Dany lifts the visor of Rhaegar's helm a moment later, only to discover her own face, which signifies that she has become the last dragon, or is about to. Something that she did when she emerged from the funeral pyre as a manifestation of Azor Ahai Reborn, the original burning man, and she was covered in ash, if you recall. As Dany walks into the pyre, she proclaims that she was fire made flesh, just as the dragons are. So that all checks out. Rhaego is made of fire, Rhaegar is made of fire, Rhaegal and Daenerys are fire made flesh. It's Azor Ahai Reborn, everyone, warrior of fire, dragon of the Weirwood net. Just as Rhaego the Burning Man has parallels to Azor Ahai, so does Rhaegal the Green Dragon, as we've seen with Rhaegal's ties to thunder. For example, just like Azor Ahai and the Grey King, Rhaegal the Green Dragon is a moon killer. In A Dance with Dragons, Daenerys goes to visit Viserion and Rhaegal in the pit under the pyramid, and we get this description of Rhaegal.
Rhaegal, still chained, was gnawing on the carcass of a bull.
Aha, we're well familiar with the slaying of the bull as a symbol of sacrificing the moon. I don't think I even need to recap all of the many times we've seen that. Here in the pit, we catch the green dragon red-handed, see what I did there, killing and devouring a bull. That, of course, is very consistent with the idea that a green seer dragon broke the moon. Those moon meteors were in turn described as dragons, thunderbolts, sea dragons, hammers of the waters, and of course a sun spear. And then not 3 paragraphs after Rhaegal is eating the bull, we get a sun spear.
Rhaegal roared in answer, and fire filled the pit, a spear of red and yellow. Viserion replied, his own flames gold and orange.
The color of the fire of each dragon tends to match the coloring of their bodies, with gold sometimes added in. So, for example, Drogon is black fire shot through with red, or sometimes shot through with red and gold. Viserion, the white and gold dragon, often has pale fire or golden fire, and we just saw that Rhaegal's fire can be orange and yellow shot through with green a moment ago. But sometimes George likes to play with the colors a little bit to suit a given scene or to suit symbolism, of course. In this scene inside the pyramid, George chooses to describe Rhaegal's fire as red and yellow. I believe that that is because he called the fire a spear, and to really imply it as a sun spear, it would need to be red and yellow, which are the colors of the Dornish sun transfixed by a spear sigil. So what I'm seeing here in this scene is a green dragon devouring a moon bull and then throwing a fiery sun spear, right when Quentin Martell is hanging around. All right, this is one of those clues which by itself, wouldn't be something that I'd base an entire theory on, but as always, I am looking for repeated manifestations of the same pattern to make the best interpretation. And this one fits in pretty well with the green dragon waking with thunder, riding or flying like a storm, creating burning men and killing lunar bulls. Now he's throwing sun spears. And speaking of sun spear and green dragons, which create burning men, you know we have to talk about Quentin, the would-be dragon tamer who tries to ride the green dragon and becomes a burning man instead. We're obviously going to continue to talk about Rhaegal, but let's make this a section break since we're going to switch over to focusing on Quentin now for a minute. All right. How we doing, folks, ladies?
Hanging in there. This is fun. The chat's pretty fun.
Yeah, it's pumping today. I see. It looks healthy. We've got 135 viewers. Thank you, everybody. Fake Aria asks me, OMG, LML, how do you catch all these things? I don't know, man. It's just what I do. It's just what I do. They just jump out to me. And of course, I got lots of good friends pointing stuff out once I throw something out there. And this particular essay I started writing like a year and a half ago after I wrote Weirwood Compendium 1. This was going to be Weirwood Compendium 2. And then I decided to do the Green Zombies series. And then I went with the Burning Brandon direction and just sort of shelved all this Rhaegal Green Dragon stuff. So it's been, you know, these ideas have been marinating for a long time, and I filled it in a lot. When I came back to rewrite it, I added a lot of stuff, you know, because we've found a lot in the Weirwood Compendium, and it all builds up. And so now I look back at a scene like the prophecy of the stallion who mounts the world, and I see the rising smoke column. Before, I just looked at that as the smoke that blots out the stars, but now I can see it as a version of the ash tree Yggdrasil. So same thing with Drogo in the pyre. He rides a smoky stallion up to the stars, and we know that Yggdrasil is a gray horse, and we know that the smoke column is equated with Yggdrasil by George. So this is Drogo riding Yggdrasil up to the stars to become the Red Comet, essentially. So it's just layers and layers. That's why we keep coming back to the same old scenes and then like peeling off something new from it, because the first time we go through and we're like, look, he's pulling a flaming sword out of something called the Mother. This is Azor Ahai, you know, and Lightbringer. And we're just putting the basic things together. Like I always talk about an essay by, oh God, R plus L equals Lightbringer by Schmendrick. And one of the big things that he discovered was, and yes, I'm also talking about Sleipnir when I talk about the Grey Horse. Yeah, we're gonna do a whole episode on Sleipnir, so don't worry about that. But thank you for correcting me. In any case, I completely lost my train of thought.
I'm going to butt in just for a second, if you don't mind, and ask
please.
Sanri how her green dragon is doing, because I know that she has a new green dragon that's part of her animal family.
Yes, I do. And
well, that's right.
We don't know the gender yet, so if it's a girl, it's gonna be Moony and Moon Dancer. If it's a boy, it's gonna be Rhaegal, and she is all different kinds of colors of green. She's very lovely.
Or he, either way.
She or he, but I really want it to be a girl, just because I'm surrounded by males. No offense, men.
Rock party, man. Sausage party.
It really is. Here's your burning tree dragons. We finished that up.
Oh, yes, and Sleipnir, not Sleepnir. I always say Sleipnir. It's not. It's Sleipnir. Sorry. So basically, just to real quickly set this straight, Sleipnir is a metaphor for astral projection, just as Yggdrasil is. That's the thing that unites them. They're both a kind of shamanic horse that Odin rides, but they're slightly different metaphors. They sort of overlap because they're both known as Odin's horse. So we'll be talking about all that and all sorted out, and I'll say Sleipnir the right way and all that stuff. And yeah, so
it's Norse. It's hard, man.
Yeah, it is. It is. All right. So Sanri, what are you currently drawing? Looks like more dragons.
Yeah, you said green dragon quite a lot of times. So I drew a Rhaegal. And I'm trying to find my original sea dragon sketch I was working on. I had a problem where I just broke my layers for a second.
Yeah, we're putting Rhaegal on the map today. Viserion and Drogon get all the attention basically at this point. So we're
Rhaegal's turn for sure.
Yeah, he's beautiful and underappreciated. And funnily enough, in other mythologies, like green dragons are associated with like magic, and in Pyrenees, like anybody who's read the I think it's called the Dragon Riders of Pern series by Ian McCafferty. Green dragons are like the lowest ranking dragons for Dragon Riders. So I always thought it was interesting, like going in, reading these books and knowing like that from that position, having read those as the before reading Aswaf, I was like, oh wow, because green and bronze are like one of the higher ranking dragons. So Rhaegal is like really interesting to me.
That's really interesting about green dragons because pretty much everybody is trying to ride the green dragon. Like,
right?
Green sight is what everybody is aiming for. So
it's quite the metaphor. Yes, we're gonna go a little deeper on it now. The whole Quentin stuff is really great. So let's go ahead and return to the script. And looks like, yeah, the sea dragon is coming along. I'm excited to see where this will be by the end of the next section.
Okay.
Which is going to require flamenco music. Yes. And some Patreon names. A dragon in the deep wood. This next section is brought to you by Matthias Mormont, Sea Goat of the Bottomless Depths, Count Magpie the Rude, the Dinky Giant, Hornblower of the Oslo Fjord, the Lady of Stellar Reason and Maleficence, Lord Brandon Brewer of Castle Blackroom, sworn alesmith to House Stark, Grand Maester of the Zithomancers Guild and Keeper of the Buzz, and Sir Vorian, the Warg of the Morning, wielder of the dual blades of Sunrise. And Dom Gorham, Poseidon of the Dragonglass Sea, the Orcish priest. Had some very appropriate nicknames there. Poseidon of the Dragonglass Sea. We had a Sea Goat of the Bottomless Depths. Shout out to Matthias Mormont, aka Matty K from the In Deep Geek. I'm sorry, Super Geeky Playdates podcast. I'm getting my geekies all turned around. But while I'll shout out Robert from In Deep Geek while I'm at it too. Shout out to all my geeks. Anyways, we've got sea goats and we've got orcish priests of the Dragonglass Sea. It's great. It's there's a million things for you to draw, Sanri, if you ever want to start drawing patron names.
Oh man. Oh man.
I've conjured some great fantasies here. In any case, me and my patrons together. And I got some new ones coming next week, too. So back to the scripto. This is called A Dragon in the Deep Wood. And my favorite description of Rhaegal's green scales comes in A Dance with Dragons as Quentin, the soon-to-be burning man, beholds the green dragon in the pit. Melanie, take us away.
Two eyes rose up before him. Bronze they were, brighter than polished shields, glowing with their own heat, burning behind a veil of smoke rising from the dragon's nostrils. The light of Quentin's torch washed over scales of dark green, the green of moss in the deep woods at dusk, just before the last light fades. Then the dragon opened its mouth, and light and heat washed over them. Behind a fence of sharp black teeth, he glimpsed the furnace glow, the shimmer of a sleeping fire 100 times brighter than his torch. The dragon's head was larger than a horse's, and the neck stretched on and on, uncoiling like some great green serpent, as the head rose, until those two glowing bronze eyes were staring down at him. Green, the prince thought. His scales are green. Rhaegal, he said. His voice caught in his throat, and what came out was a broken croak. Frog, he thought. I am turning into frog again. The food, he croaked, remembering. Bring the food.
Such a good quote. Thanks, and a great performance by Melanie. Thank you, Melanie. That's a fun one. So this is particularly tasty because not only do we have a reference to the idea of a dragon in the deep woods with the description of Rhaegal's green scales, but consider the green as moss language. Jojen's eyes are described as green as moss, and Jojen is, of course, a green dreamer. Similarly, when Bloodraven describes the ways in which those with green sight are marked, he describes their green eyes with the same language, almost exactly, as green as the moss on a tree in the heart of the forest. In other words, the description of Rhaegal's green as moss scales evokes the eyes of green seers and the forest itself, specifically the deep woods at dusk just before the last light fades. That last bit suggests the long night, which of course I am now claiming was brought on by green seer dragons, or you might say by dragons going into the Weirwood net, perhaps. And speaking of shifty frog eaters like Jojen, I've mentioned before that there is a frog eater joke in the middle of the scene because Quentin's nickname is Frog. And as he's trying to say, "Bring the food," in the middle of the confrontation, his voice croaks and he thinks to himself, "I'm turning into frog again." Thus, Quentin is the froggy food, and the dragon is a would-be frog eater. And if you're thinking of comparing Dany's dragons eating Quentin to Bran eating Jojen in paste form, yep, Bran is a symbolic dragon and a frog eater, but that's a tale for another day. There's another gross one for you, Sanri. Sorry. These,
It's okay, I missed it.
Oh, you were drawn, huh? That's right. There are other ties to the Crannog men with Quentin too, because his hair and eyes are described as the color of mud. And Barristan has a lengthy inner monologue about how Quentin is like mud, and about how mud is useful for growing crops and all, but Dany wanted fire, not mud, and Dorne sent her mud. Quentin is a mudman, as well as a frog, in other words. And mudman is one of the names the Ironborn use for the Crannog men, the mudmen, who are also the frog eaters. That makes at least 3 allusions to the Crannog men with Quentin's symbolism. He's a frog, he's a mudman, and he's trying to ride a dragon whose moss-green scales match the eyes of Jojen. So, what's the point of all Quentin's allusions to the Crannog men, you're asking? Well, Crannog men almost certainly interbred with the children of the forest in the past, which is why the green seer gifts run so strong amongst them. Therefore, I think the likely purpose behind tying Quentin to the Crannog men is so that he can be used as a proxy for a green seer trying to ride a green dragon. I don't see what else it could be, really. And because Quentin has that distant Targaryen ancestry, which is how he tries to talk himself into this mad folly, what is actually being suggested here is a dragon-blooded, children of the forest-blooded green seer person trying to ride the green dragon. Quentin, of course, fails miserably in his attempt to ride the dragon. Instead, he is roasted by one. Rhaegal, the green dragon, of course. In other words, the frog with a drop of dragon blood became a burning man when he called down the fire of the green dragon. I'll quote the last lines of his Dragon Tamer chapter here.
Quentin turned and threw his left arm across his face to shield his eyes from the furnace wind. Rhaegal, he reminded himself. The green one is Rhaegal. When he raised the whip, he saw that the lash was burning. His hand as well. All of him was burning.
Oh, he thought. Several recognizable Lightbringer symbols here. The burning whip, which matches Drogo's fiery whip that appears to crack open the first dragon's egg. The fiery hand, a familiar symbol that evokes the Weirwood leaves as burning bloody hands, as well as the fiery hand of R'hllor. The furnace wind, which then gives us more firestorm imagery, which is a nice opposite to the cold winds that the others bring. And the left arm, burnt by fire, might suggest the dragon meteor which struck the arm of Dorne. In fact, it does, because earlier in this chapter, Quentin thinks to himself, I am Dorne, or I am Dorne, on 2 different occasions. His arm is the arm. What's that?
That's me every day. I am Dorne.
I am Dorne. On 2 different occasions, he says that. And then he gets his arm burnt. So his arm is the arm of Dorne. So what we have in this scene is a green dragon blasting the arm of Dorne with a spear of dragon fire, a sun spear. As a complement to this idea, Quentin's repeated choking and croaking in this scene implies a strangled neck, as in the neck of Westeros, which was strangled by the hammer of the waters. And of course, all of Quentin's frog and mudman symbolism also points to the neck. You'll recall the many times that we see arm and neck wounds together in a Lightbringer forging incident, such as in the Mountain and the Viper and the Hammer of the Waters episode. And here we have another, a neck that croaks like a frog, and an arm of Dorne burnt by dragonfire. It doesn't get any more detailed than that, folks. We've mentioned before that Quentin himself actually has weak Bloodstone Emperor symbolism too. He's the sun's son, as prophesied to Daenerys by the Undying of Qarth, an idea that is at the heart of the Azor Ahai Reborn as a second sun, S-U-N or S-O-N symbol. That, of course, is the idea that Lightbringer and Azor Ahai Reborn, being one and the same, was the son of the sun and also lit up the sky like a second sun, as Sunfire and Moondancer did. Quentin wants to ride a dragon, and he wants to marry the Amethyst Empress Reborn, Daenerys Targaryen, trademark Durndurnden, much as Euron does. And of course, Euron is another Bloodstone Emperor, Echo. So Bloodstone Emperors are all trying to marry Daenerys. That makes all of his that makes all of Quentin's Crannogman symbolism all the more remarkable, as it's yet another clue. Okay. That makes all of Quentin's Crannogman symbolism all the more remarkable because it's yet another clue that ties the Bloodstone Emperor to Greenseer magic. Quentin is symbolizing the Bloodstone Emperor and a Greenseer dragon. Now, as a final clue about Quentin's Bloodstone Emperor parallels, we hear of his first kiss coming from a set of twins, the fair-haired Drinkwater twins. The punchline is that Quentin didn't know which one it was that kissed him. But the clue here is about the sun having two lunar wives or queens, a pattern we see distinctly with Aegon the Conqueror, Rhaegar, Stannis, Jon Snow, and in more subtle fashion with other Azor Ahai Reborn characters, such as we saw in the Moons of Ice and Fire series. To hammer this point home, Cletus Ironwood once suggested to Quentin that although they are thought of as too lowborn for Quentin to marry, he could take one or even both of the Drinkwater twins as paramours after he has his official state marriage to some important lady of a noble house. Oh, here Painkiller Jane pops in with a great bit of knowledge and says, a quintain is a name for a straw man knight, such as Tommen rides against. So Quentin is probably a verbal pun on quintain, and that also implies Quentin as a straw man. Well, that is really fantastic. It just goes to show you, like, there is never, it never stops. It never stops. There's always more examples. As soon as I hit print on an essay, there's more. It's great. But that's why I feel so confident in making more and more episodes and going deeper and deeper on all this stuff, because we continue to get corroboration of the basic theory. We continue to get corroboration of all of the little sub-theories the more we study it. It doesn't fall apart. It just crystallizes, and that's really why this thing is working for me. So thanks. Nice job, Painkiller Jane. You're an all-star. Yeah, thank you, guys. You're awesome. Okay.
PKJ!
Painkiller Jane in the house. So while we're talking about the Great Empire of the Dawn and Quentin's links to Greenseer magic and the Bloodstone Emperor, now is a good time to talk about the eyes of the Bloodstone Emperor. Yes. Now, of course, bloodstones in the books seem to have been turned black via the whole burning black moonblood thing, as evidenced by the greasy black stone and the many instances of burning being associated with turning blood black. But real bloodstone is mostly dark green and flecked with spots of bright red that look like spatters of blood. And I've got a good one for that. Here, let's see. All right, I'm going to see if I can get the focus. Oh, I've been locked on Melanie this whole time. Sorry, Melanie, you've been starring. So this is Bloodstone. See if you can get the focus to happen. It's sorry, guys, it's a little tricky. There it is.
Hold your hand up behind it. Sometimes that helps.
Okay. Yeah, totally. So you can see it's like a dark green, and the red is very blotchy. I mean, it looks like it's spattered on there. So anyways, you can pull up plenty of bloodstone on the internet if that wasn't a clear look. But the point is that real bloodstone is dark green and blood red. And so I tend to think of the Bloodstone Emperor as probably, at least after his transformation, as having either black eyes or fiery red eyes. But if we want to follow the pattern of the Gemstone Emperors having eyes to match their gems, then perhaps the Bloodstone Emperor started out with eyes that were dark green and blood red, which are the colors of the eyes of Greenseers, who have eyes as green as the moss on a tree in the heart of the deep forest, yes, but also eyes as red as blood. If you were to mix those two, you'd have the exact appearance of Bloodstone. You'd also have one freaky looking dude. So, let me catch my breath for a second. Hang on. Cough button.
Do you think he would have bloodstone eyes, like brownish, greenish, reddish? Or do you think he'd have like one green and one red eye? Or is that too anime?
I'm not sure. You can draw it however you want, but I think, of course, the symbolism is the thing here. Just gives
I
you
like
the
the
two.
idea of being flecked with the green flecked with red. I think
Yeah.
I do too, because of Tywin's green eyes flecked with gold.
Gold, yeah. Yeah.
And of course, my necklace bloodstone has a bunch of gold, and some bloodstone does have these bands of gold as well as the green and red. So, yellow is the other color of green seer eyes too, for what it's worth. So it actually goes even deeper. Even deeper. So as we turn back to Quentin, the dragon tamer, we find more, and Mallory, go ahead and mute your thingy. Thank you. As we turn back to Quentin, the dragon tamer, we find more relevant symbolism, much of it related to the sea dragon. We know that a torch can be symbolic of Lightbringer, such as with Mithras's sword and torch, or such as when the comet is called Mormont's torch. And of course, a torch is really just a fancy name for a burning brand, such as the drowned god carries. In the quote from the scene where Quentin enters the dragon chamber and beholds Rhaegal's glorious visage, it says that the light of Quentin's torch washed over scales of dark green. That's a quick, subtle depiction of Azor Ahai, the Bloodstone Emperor, using Lightbringer the torch to create a green dragon, or to make one appear, if you will. And it also gives us watery fire dragon symbolism, implying Rhaegal as a sea dragon, because it's washing over his green scales. Similarly, when Rhaegal opened his furnace mouth, it said that light and heat washed over Quentin and his party. All of this fire washing also reminds us of Daenerys imagining herself cleansed in the alchemical wedding bonfire, and hints at Quentin's upcoming symbolic fire transformation. What's really cool is that those burning wooden dragons that Aegon the Unworthy made get a great reference, just as Quent and company prepare to try to steal the dragons. Here, the references to the Grey King myths kick into overdrive.
The big man looked out toward the terrace. I knew it would rain, he said in a gloomy tone. My bones were aching last night. They always ache before it rains. The dragons won't like this. Fire and water don't mix, and that's a fact. You get a good cook fire lit, blazing away nice. Then it starts to piss down rain, and the next thing, your wood is sodden and your flames are dead. Jairus chuckled. Dragons are not made of wood, Arch. Some are. That old King Aegon, the randy one, he built wooden dragons to conquer us. That ended bad, though. So may this, the prince thought. The follies and failures of Aegon the Unworthy did not concern him, but he was full of doubts and misgivings.
Yeah, so may this, yes. Yes, indeed. So here we have a direct association between Quentin, the burning frogman's attempt to ride the green dragon, and the burning wooden dragons of King Aegon the Randy, which evoked the sea dragon and the burning tree myths. What's really great is the wildfire joke here. Arch says that fire and water do not mix, for when it pisses down rain, your fire dies. But not if that piss is pyromancer's piss, as wildfire is called. And in fact, that's exactly what Aegon's wooden dragons burned with, wildfire. So fire and water don't mix unless we're talking about wildfire or about the sea dragon, who swims in the sea yet possesses living fire. My name's Naga and I'm swimming in the sea. Anyways, just as the sea dragon is functioning as a metaphor for the living fire of a weirwood, which a green seer can possess, I think it's pretty easy to see how wildfire, green fire, does something similar, uniting fire symbolism and green seer symbolism. Green fire also goes hand in hand with green fire dragons, which are also symbols of fiery green seers, as we've been seeing today. The fact that wildfire is a liquid seems an apt way to refer to the sea dragon's fire and the Ironborn's idea of bringing fire out of the sea. More on this next week. Now, after Quentin's attempt fails and Viserion and Rhaegal escape the pit, Rhaegal takes up residence in the Black Pyramid of Yerazan, which still smolders with fires. The description of it is worth quoting, and it comes from the opening of Barristan's chapter of A Dance with Dragons called The Queen's Hand.
The Dornish prince was 3 days in dying. He took his last shuddering breath in the bleak black dawn as cold rain hissed from a dark sky to turn the brick streets of the old city to rivers. The rain had drowned the worst of the fires, but wisps of smoke still rose from the smoldering ruin that had been the pyramid of Hazkar, and the great black pyramid of Yerzan, where Rhaegal had made his lair, hulled in the gloom like a fat woman bedecked with glowing orange jewels.
Mountains and pyramids, especially the tops of them, which is where Rhaegal makes his lair, can symbolize moons. So the notion of a green dragon living in a black pyramid could imply a tie between the burnt black fire moon and the green dragon. Calling that pyramid a fat woman with fiery jewels strengthens the lunar symbolism. A full moon is often called fat on occasion, and moon figures are usually women. And therefore, the fat woman with glowing jewels description of the black pyramid also suggests a burning moon goddess, one who harbors a green sea dragon. A green dragon, I should say. The reference to drowning the worst of the fire once again evokes the drowned fire symbolism of the Ironborn, the sea dragon rising from the sea with fire, and the drowned god carrying the burning brand out of the ocean. It's especially meaningful to get a drowned fire reference in such close proximity to discussion of the green dragon, and it's yet another clue linking the green dragon to drowned fire and thus to the sea dragon. Recall Quentin's torchlight washing over Rhaegal's green scales. Finally, take note of Quentin's 3 days to die thing. It seems like it might be a parallel to Jesus being dead for 3 days before his resurrection. Azor Ahai, the Burning Man, is the Jesus savior figure of the story in terms of archetypes, and we do indeed find Jesus parallels with Jon Snow and other Azor Ahai players. In fact, these lines about Quentin taking 3 days to die are the opening lines of this Barristan chapter, and they're actually the first words that follow Jon's death scene, which ends the previous chapter. As I've mentioned before, I've found that Martin sometimes likes to carry over a symbolic train of thought from one chapter to the next, and this would be one of those times. Jon manifests the symbolism of Azor Ahai and the Bloodstone Emperor quite strongly, just like Quentin, so his death is symbolically the same thing as Quentin's. Barristan ties the two chapters together, actually, because as he's searching the black dawn sky for signs of Daenerys, the dragon, we read,
He saw no sign of dragons, but he had not expected to. The dragons did not like the rain. A thin red slash marked the eastern horizon, where the sun might soon appear. It reminded Selmy of the first blood welling from a wound. Often, even with a deep cut, the blood came before the pain.
That's exactly what just happened to Jon. He was sliced across the neck by a wick whittlestick, and the blood instantly welled beneath his fingers, though he did not seem to feel it, thinking that it was only a scratch. But welling blood that quickly means that Jon's jugular was almost certainly cut open. And by the way, there's not many nerve endings right there, so you actually don't feel those wounds very much, which is why he rapidly loses feeling in his fingers, can't draw his sword, and loses consciousness before he can even be stabbed 3 more times. That's all evidence of a jugular wound. He wouldn't be losing his consciousness that quickly unless his jugular was cut. And so that's what I think is happening here. The people who think Jon actually hasn't died are almost certainly wrong. Well, that's okay, though. He's coming back. Jon is dead. He's sliced across the neck like a true sacrifice by Wick Whittlestick. Consider that name, by the way. Wick, as in candle wick, implying fire. Or wick, like wicker man, whose fate is to burn. And whittlestick implies carved wood, like a heart tree. Thus, we have very strong burning Weirwood symbolism here at Jon's death, which makes sense, of course. You could definitely call Wick a Weirwood assassin figure. Wick Whittlestick's name also calls out to Old Wick, the Iron Islands, where the sea dragon bones rest, so I think we are safe to say this is no coincidence. And of course, Jon's spirit is then headed into Ghost, who looks like a Weirwood. So, combining the symbolism of the end of Jon's chapter and the beginning of Barristan's, what we have is Jon being sacrificed by a burning tree person, which overlays with Quentin being turned into a burning man by a green dragon and then taking 3 days to die. And then we have a black dawn, the red comet wound in the sky, the green dragon taking up residence in a fat black moon pyramid, which still smolders with fire. Then fire is drowned, and men look to the sky for a morning star dragon, Daenerys, to save them and bring back the sun. It's all pretty great stuff, right? There's a bunch of bleed overs from the end of one chapter to the beginning of another, so don't think this is a one-off. We'll do some more of those in the future, and be on the lookout for these whenever you do a reread. Interestingly, I've found that the description of Rhaegal being trapped inside the pit actually mirrors Quentin's death. The following is from A Dance with Dragons and comes after Dany recalls that they had managed to chain Viserion in his sleep with relatively little struggle.
Rhaegal had been harder. Perhaps he could hear his brother raging in the pit, despite the walls of brick and stone between them. In the end, they had to cover him with a net of heavy iron chain as he basked on her terrace, and he fought so fiercely that it had taken 3 days to carry him down the servants' steps, twisting and snapping. 6 men had been burned in the struggle.
Quentin takes 3 days to die. Rhaegal takes 3 days to be carried down to the Stygian darkness of the pit, an obvious hellish underworld location. Rhaegal made Quentin into a burning man and sent him to hell, and here we see that he creates 6 burned men as he's dragged down below the pyramid. Don't miss the awesome Green Seer Weirwood net clue here, of course. Rhaegal is trapped in a net. Hello, Weirwood net as a trap for Green Seer's symbolism. It's a trap. That's a really nice one. That's trap, different kind of trap. All right. That's a nice one because it equates the symbolic death and journey to the underworld of the green dragon with being trapped in the Weirwood net. Think again of Bloodraven, a dragon chained up by the Weirwood roots down in a dark underworld in a dark underworld cave full of bones, just like Rhaegal's pit full of bones. So now think of this as an as above, so below mirror image. Rhaegal chained up in the, down below we have Rhaegal chained up in the darkness below the pyramid, but then later Rhaegal makes a lair in the smoldering black pyramid after he escapes. This is very similar to Odin going up and down Yggdrasil like a ladder to the various realms, or like the Green Seer's body sitting below the Weirwood while his spirit uses the Weirwood to fly. The image of a fiery green dragon surrounded by blackness is identical whether he's at the top or at the bottom of the pyramid, because the Green Seer really exists both below the tree and soaring above them at the same time. It's a matching symbol, but George gives it to us in 2 places and in 2 forms, a chained up version below and a set free version above, because the Green Seer is chained up below and set free when he flies above the treetops, if you will. There's a possible parallel for this. Oh, and of course, I guess I should add that you could think of the pyramid and the all-seeing eye symbol that's on our money, of course. Like the all-seeing eye is at the top of the pyramid, and that's very much kind of what George is creating here with the liberated green dragon making a lair at the top of the pyramid. So thinking there's a possible parallel for this symbol of a green dragon inside the black pyramid in the placement of the dragon's eggs around Drogo's corpse at the beginning of the alchemical wedding scene. Check this out.
She climbed the pyre herself to place the eggs around her sun and stars. The black by his heart under his arm. The green beside his head, his braid coiled around it. The cream and gold down between his legs.
It could be that the green is placed by his head to signify vision, knowledge, enlightenment, that sort of thing. Again, it's very similar to the eye at the top of the pyramid. Green seeing is done with the mind and the third eye, in other words. And Drogo's oily black braid coils around the green eggs, surrounding it, giving us a similar image to the green dragon living inside the smoldering black pyramid or below the pyramid in the black pit when he's chained up. And as we've discussed before, Drogo's hair is also given water symbolism in A Game of Thrones when his braid is undone. It says, his hair spread out behind him like a river of darkness, oiled and gleaming. The green dragon egg placed in Drogo's black, oily river of darkness hair is therefore more sea dragon symbolism, depicting a green dragon that lives or wakes from the darkling sea. The Black Sea in particular is, of course, a reference to the cosmic ocean of space, which again speaks to the Green Seer's ability to travel time and space through their bond with the Weirwoods. That fits very well with the green egg being placed by the head, I'd say, and again, with the green dragon as the eye of the pyramid. Consider that this is all happening with Drogo, a signature Azor Ahai Solar King. He awakens from the Lightbringer bonfire as a fiery sorcerer who rides the smoky, burning ash tree smoky stallion to the sky so that he can then ride the red comet as a star horse. That's what they believe, anyways. He's like a green seer dragon, defying death and swimming in the dark ocean of space through the use of the Weirwood net, the burning tree. Oddly enough, Dany thinks about touching the comet one time, right after being inspired by her green dragon Rhaegal trying to fly.
Across the tent, Rhaegal unfolded green wings to flap and flutter a half-foot before thumping to the carpet. When he landed, his tail lashed back and forth in fury, and he raised his head and screamed. If I had wings, I would want to fly too, Dany thought. The Targaryens of old had ridden upon dragonback when they went to war. She tried to imagine what it would feel like to straddle a dragon's neck and soar high into the air. It would be like standing on a mountaintop, only better. The whole world would be spread out below. If I flew high enough, I could even see the 7 kingdoms and reach up and touch the comet.
Whoa, boy. Does being a green seer dragon have something to do with touching comets? Or is this a metaphor for using green seer magic to reach for the fire of the gods? Well, that's a question we'll have to return to another time. That's pretty much it for today, though I do have a bit of bonus material here to act as a cool down from the sheer raw intensity of touching comets and flying through space. Although I do promise you we are going to follow up with all of the Astrobrand theories and flying comet theories and all that stuff. Ravenous Reader will be sated, don't worry. But returning to the placement of the eggs around Drogo and the pyre, if I were to speculate further about the placement of the other 2 eggs, I would say that the black one by his heart makes a lot of sense, as we've seen that meteors can be described as the hearts of fallen stars, and the black meteors would be black hearts, for which there is abundant correlating black heart symbolism with the Azor Ahai, which you guys and gals are all familiar with, such as Robert swearing about Rhaegar's black heart, right in like one of the very first chapters. As for the white dragon placed in Drogo's crotch, well, that's kind of too big of a topic to open up right now, and I'd be tempted to use up all my good penis jokes that I really should save for the white dragon episode. I mean, you don't want to fire your gun before the time is right. Oh, sorry. I do have one more serious observation about the alchemical bonfire and the cracking of the eggs. It seems that the 3 cracks of the eggs pretty much relate to the sequence of the Long Night disaster in detail. Check this out. So the first egg cracks with the sound of shattering stone, as Drogo's flaming lash snaked down at the pyre, hissing. That's the snaky Lightbringer comet striking the moon and shattering its stone. This is the white egg, and it's definitely associated with the moon, because as Dany is showered with ash and cinders, and as the roaring filled the world, at Dany's feet lands a chunk of curved rock, pale and veined with gold, broken and smoking. A pale stone crescent is a clear moon symbol, especially when it's a dragon's egg. So that is what this first crack is all about, the breaking of the moon. Then comes the second crack, as loud and sharp as thunder, and with it, the fire that touches the secret hearts of the wooden logs. This is the storm god's thunderbolt descending from the moon and setting fire to the heart tree, if you will. Right after this is when Dany thinks to herself, I am Daenerys Stormborn, and then comes the line about stepping into the firestorm. So as I pointed out, the green dragon's egg hatching, everything is related to storm and thunder symbolism. So I have to think this is about the thunderbolt coming from the moon and setting fire to the tree. And finally comes the breaking of the world as the black dragon's egg, the black bloodstone, cracks open to birth the black dragon. This, I believe, is the Hammer of the Waters meteor striking the arm of Dorne and splitting the continents apart, breaking the world. This is the Sun Spear, which beats down like a fiery hammer, as we read in A Feast for Crows. The evidence is found in the names left around the broken arm. Bloodstone Island and Sun Spear, as we've discussed. And of course, there's also Ghost Hill of House Toland, whose arms, as it happens, bear a green dragon on a yellow circle. The other name, Stepstone Island, is called Grey Gallows, which we know refers to the gallows tree, Yggdrasil, and perhaps the Grey King, whose Weirwood throne is the A Song of Ice and Fire equivalent of Yggdrasil. So there you have it. 3-step process as told by Dany's Dragons, from Comet Moon Collision to Falling Thunderbolt to Hammer of the Waters. Now that we've begun to unravel the symbolism of the green dragon and the burning tree, we can see the whole picture from this scene, which we've discussed many times previously. And that just kind of goes to show how densely Martin's ideas are layered in. So that is the green dragon. And once again, next week will kind of be part 2, and it will be called, let's see, The Devil and the Deep Green Sea. And we're going to keep going with the symbolism. We're pretty much going to pick right up where we left off. So I will now accept your applause and fanfare. But remember to unmute yourself.
Hooray! Yay! There was much rejoicing.
Much rejoicing.
Yay!
All right.
Oh, the eyes. The eyes are so good. Show that again, Mallory. That's so good.
Right here. Creepy.
Oh, nice. The bloodstone eyes. Cool. That's good.
They look
Back up a little
freaking
bit.
bloody. Ugh.
What's that, Luce?
Nice. So, of course, guys, when I was giving you a hard time for not listening, I was completely kidding. I can tell by your comments and questions that you guys are obviously listening. And I saw throughout this episode that I think you guys liked a lot of the ideas that we were popping out here. Kind of a fresh line of symbolism. A lot of times I beat the same horse over and over and over, kind of. So, you know, a lot of new stuff here. And it's fun to get into a new character like Quentin that we haven't really touched before. Aegon the Unworthy. So glad you guys seem to like this one. It was a lot of fun to work on. You know?
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, and we've Sanri's been pulling a bunch of questions to the side for us to read. But Melanie, you've been my robot here. You've been my trained Melanie, reciting all the words that the Maesters taught you or whatever.
I'm yet another trained raven or parrot or something.
Yeah, so give me some freestyle. Give me some reaction to what we've the ideas we kicked out here.
Oh my gosh. Like, you know, it's, as usual, a lot to digest for people, I think. I've read this a couple of times. And I wanted to bring up something that I think parallels the ideas that you've brought forth pretty nicely. Yep. And that's the scene in which Bran is inside of Summer. And it's the scene where Theon is taking over Winterfell. I have a quote, but it's like super long. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but
are you talking about the Winterfell dragon quote?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, you can skim it if you want and pull out a few lines.
All right. Yeah. Just a couple things. First of all, you have the ashes fell like a soft gray snow. Then you have Summer smelling everything, and it says fire, fire, fire. No smell was more dangerous. Not even the cold smell of iron, the hard cold smell of iron, the stuff of man claws and hard skin. And then he sees the winged snake, whose roar was a river of flame. And there's more. But there was just a couple of things that Mary and I were kicking around earlier, and I wanted to bring up. First of all, in that scene, we're talking about water dragons because Winterfell is being overtaken by the sea. So the whole setting is happening under the sea. And then you have Bran hiding out in the crypts, which is similar to Rhaegal and Viserion hiding underneath the pyramid. And that's kind of like another under the sea underworld setting. Mm-hmm. And then you have the winged snake. So there's your sea dragon. And just like Rhaegal went from under the pyramid to the top of the pyramid, pretty much the same thing is happening. This Bran, I'm assuming, you know, it's so hard because so many different people have different interpretations of it. But just for this purpose, let's assume that Bran in the crypts is being represented by the winged snake going up into the air. And that's Bran rising to the astral plane.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And of course, remember, he rides the gargoyle upside down when he's outside, overhearing the secret talk of the gods, Jaime and Cersei. Absolutely. And somebody at some point, I'm really sorry, I can't remember who it was, they brought up that the original gargoyles were dragons. I think. I might be wrong. Yeah, that was me. The story of the first gargoyle is that a dragon was killed and somebody chopped off his head, mounted it to the church, turned to stone, and that was to scare away the other monsters. So it's
Yes.
kind of like training a wolf to guard the flock kind of idea.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh my goodness. Who's that?
Oh!
Maester
Hello.
Merry
Welcome.
on theme.
I
What do
had
I
my
see?
headphones in, so briefly I was hearing everything double before I closed the YouTube window, and I thought my head was going to explode. So
Yeah, that freaks me out when that happens.
Yeah.
If it
but
goes on,
as requested, I'm wearing my Green Dragon Inn T-shirt. So
yes,
and I dug out a green wig, so
Yes.
I'm happy
Of
to be
course
here
you
to
have a
celebrate
green
this
wig.
occasion with you.
More than justifies your presence here on the live stream. All
Can I-
right.
Pop back
Carry
in with more stuff about the Winterfell scene.
Yeah, keep
All
going.
right.
Yeah.
Just a couple more things because I saw that. Yeah, Mary, when
Take
she
your
was still
time.
in the
You don't
chat.
need to-
Do you want to talk about the thunder sounds?
Oh, I think that was one of the reasons that I wanted us to look at that passage, because you have that great symbolism of the green dragon representing the burning tree struck by thunder, and George uses that thunder cracking, thunder roaring symbolism, plus that symbolism of a storm, which we also associate the storm with the green dragon. And so I thought just the kind of sensory imagery of the passage is really cool for reinforcing the connection with the green dragon specifically.
Absolutely. If you look at it really closely, it actually says, all through the night the fires crackled, and once there was a great roar and a crash that made the earth jump under his feet. So there's 3 different sounds that really parallel the 3 different eggs hatching. And even like the sound of a crackling, to me, it's like the sound of an egg opening. So.
And Winterfell has a ton of shell language all throughout that scene as well. So it's implied as a cracked egg for sure. Nice, very nice. Nice job. There's a lot of linkage. Painkiller Jane was throwing some fire there. The Quintain stuff is awesome. To keep going with that, and I'm going to cut that back into the script actually after the fact. It's so good. So Quentin is like Quintain, and the big Quintain scene that we got was when Tommen was riding against the Quintain, which of course had stag antlers on it and was supposedly standing in for Stannis, who they were warring against at the time. And so it's a wicker man, straw man, Quintain that's also a horned lord. So you can see Martin's pretty consistent about showing us the burning stag man, King of Winter figure. So think about put that symbolism back into Quentin's scene. When he lights up on fire like the wicker man, that's when he is becoming the green dragon, which of course means he's going into the Weirwood net. And think about Renly. Resurrected Renly on the Blackwater had all the fiery symbolism. When it was of course Garland Tyrell in Renly's armor, but his golden antlers were running with flame, and the green fires look ghostly on his green armor. So it's really similar symbolism.
And I think one of the things that I'd wanted to bring up was that Quentin also ends up being, in addition to just a straight up Burning Man, he also ends up being an unintentional self-sacrifice that wakes the dragons from stone. And there's some pretty interesting quoted language about that. So not only do we know the Great Pyramid's made of brick and stone, we have descriptions of it having steep stone ramps. We also have the Great Pyramid described as becoming a labyrinth in one of Quentin's chapters, which I think is really cool. But my favorite part about the dragons awakening from stone is when he goes in and sees, Quentin goes in and sees Viserion. He notes that Viserion had dug himself a hole in the brick with flame and claw, a hole big enough to sleep in. And then what's Quentin's internal monologue? And we've just woken him. So he literally thinks to himself that they have woken the dragon from stone. And then what happens when Quentin dies? Well, the dragons that were trapped in the Stygian darkness of the stone prison are allowed to escape. So they literally are awoken from stone. So we have both different elements of the kind of Burning Man sacrifice myth playing out at the same time.
And that's a great parallel back to Winterfell, which is also a labyrinth. And of course,
I want to piggyback on that idea. Not only do bones lie in the crypts of Winterfell, that's labyrinth and maze-like, but we also have the scene that Mary was just talking about. I think it's called a warren, and I wanted to shout out to Wiz the Smith and his Hollow Hill idea. But it's littered with bones, and then we have Bloodraven's Cave, and that's also littered with bones. So like it's just really strong Hollow Hill goes.
Yeah, where the Warren language is actually is in the description of the Pyromancers Guild main hall. And that's actually a really good. I mean, that might not be the opportune time to talk about it, but the Pyromancers Guild is a hollow hill under Visenya's Hill, and there's a whole great quotation from one of Tyrion's chapters where he remarks on the green light reflecting off all of the black stone. And so it really evokes this idea of being in the belly of a green dragon.
Is it under Visenya's Hill or Rhaenys Hill?
I just looked at the quote. I'm pretty sure it's Visenya's, but I will double check.
Yeah, I've actually got the King's Landing map somewhere, I thought, but
it says they emerged atop the broad curving steps that fronted the Street of Sisters near the foot of Visenya's Hill. So I suppose it could, but they come out at the foot of Visenya's Hill after having been in the Guild Hall of the Alchemists.
Okay, so the emphasis there is the Street of the Sisters. The Street of the Sisters is the portal. I'm going to get to that. It ties into Painkiller Jane's Penny Tree thing. The green fire is symbolizes the Weirwood net, and the Weirwood net is the portal between ice and fire. So that's why, like, they come out at the end at the foot of Visenya's Hill because they're leaving the fire realm and they're ready to enter into the Ice Moon at that point. So I think that's what's going on. It's implied as in between, and then the Street of the Sisters is as straight as an arrow. So it implies flying from one to the other even.
That makes sense. And it's the other interesting bit of imagery there too is he describes the way that the air looks as a murky green, which fits in really well with all this murky green, moss green, deep woods kind of symbolism that we're seeing.
Oh yeah. When Arianne is in the Rainwoods, like the air itself was green.
Exactly.
Yeah. And Ravenous Reader is rolling through the Battle of the Blackwater with all kinds of great green fire quotes. Yes, I think we're going to do a whole episode on the Battle of the Blackwater, Ravenous. But first, we need to tell everyone about the Green Sea next week so that we can really, really, get that one. Because the Battle of the Blackwater is one of those scenes where you have to graduate from all the compendiums and you have to know all the symbolism, and then the thing comes together. It's like an orchestra of symbolism all being, there's the Bridge of Ships. The Bridge of Ships is made up of burning ships, which are sea dragons. It's making a bridge, which is like a weir. And then people are being sent to hell by it. So there's all kinds of crazy stuff going on there.
And then you have, one thing I'm excited about too is the Davos death/resurrection scene is really beautiful as above, so below, because above you have the green dragon wildfire dancing everywhere. But then as Davos is swimming deeper and deeper, he thinks about getting stuck in the green mud, and he uses the phrase "in the green darkness" when he's in the water. So there's this nice, it's the same type of imagery that we're getting, same type of symbolism that we're getting with Quentin and Rhaegal.
That's like getting stuck in the deep green mud or the deep green forest.
Well, and it's the mudman symbolism, LML, that you're talking about with Quentin as well. We see the same thing. We see the same thing under the water.
And John the Fiddler is a good comp to Quentin because he becomes the brown dragon when he falls into the mud after his joust with the son of Fireball, who has the comet symbolism. He's also got the Weirwood stigmata with the bloody mouth in that scene. So John the Fiddler, who is a secret Blackfire, gets knocked into the mud, becomes the brown dragon. So he fails very much like Quentin. And then Bloodraven burns his Blackfire standard, and there's this great description of the smoke curling up to the sky like a writhing snake or something, which is obviously the rising smoke Weirwood symbolism. So it's a very comparable scene there that you could compare it to. And no, that does not give you an excuse to do poop symbolism, guys, because we have a brown dragon. Mudman, think Mudman, like the people emerging from the earth myths, you know. You guys are terrible. Predictable, though. Sanrixian, I've been ignoring you shamelessly a little bit today. Sorry,
okay.
We've been thick in the throes of mythology and symbolism here. So why don't you, I see you're just starting something new, but would you mind giving us a tour of some of the stuff you've been working on?
Yeah. Bloodstone Emperor. I think this was confusing a lot of people while I was drawing it. Yeah.
No, that looks good. I like it. He should have, I'm sorry, Bloodstone Emperor should have at least a streak of silver in his hair, like a inverted dark star. You know?
Yeah.
That would make sense.
That would.
You don't have to do it right now.
I was about to say, I might not be able to find the layer right now. We have the water dragon. I inked him a little bit more, and I started putting eyeballs on his fins.
So I'm requesting that you make this a serious drawing.
Oh yeah, I'll get rid of me
beautiful.
out of there.
Yeah, this is a really good looking sea dragon here. Yeah, you should develop this. This is great.
Yeah, it's got feet like my little dragon. They have these cool, like crazy, like almost iguana-like toes. They go out like far.
Yeah,
Anyhow.
I like it.
I love that it has webbed feet.
Mm-hmm. Like a squishy.
He is a naga and he swims in the sea. Got to have web feet.
Oh yeah.
Nice.
So that's fun.
Did you develop any the Grey King Hall picture anymore? Or do you kind of leave that one alone?
I haven't touched that one yet.
Okay, cool.
This stream. What is that?
Oh, all the layers. All the layers.
All of them on at once. I think that's about. I just started drawing that new one. So yeah, I think that's about. Oh my gosh. Key bindings. Stop. Thank you. There we go. Yeah. The rest was just garbage.
Right, and we saw the cartoon on the left.
Yes, I'm still really proud of that. But I'm gonna make you look at it one more time.
No, I like that one. That one definitely needs to get on Twitter.
It will.
I have a feeling Chloe will like this.
I hope so. Yeah. So, good discussion.
Eyeballs on the sea dragon. They're like squid eyeballs.
How many eyeballs does Naga have?
1,001.
One.
I
was gonna say 70. Yeah.
All right, so guys, Sanri has pulled aside some questions from the chat, so I'm going to hit some of these up and then kick them to everybody here. So let's see. The Rainbow Grey King says,
"Oh,
what does that mean? What?
Hang on.
Was that? Am I doing
Ignore
something
that. The Rainbow Grey King was that Twitter thing.
Okay, all right. Let's see. Cheesecloth. How does the Moon Meteor theory square with a third long night that's implied to have happened before the founding of the Dawn Empire? No, I don't agree with that at all. I only think there was one long night. And we're going to have a second one soon. I don't think there was multiple long nights. Strong disagree. Let's see. I will totally... Oh, sorry. There's some chatter and some questions here. Let's see.
Misty306 pointed out that Aegon IV was Henry VIII, if I'm reading those Roman numerals right.
Mm-hmm.
I had a question. How do you think the Moon Singers and the Moon Dancers are related?
So I'm going to talk about the Moon Singers when we get to the Horn episode, which is going to have everything about sound and crying and singing to the moon and stuff like that. So.
And at every good party, if you have sound, you need dancing. I mean, really.
Yeah, actually, Sanri, why don't you read the questions out of this chat? That'll be easier than me staring at it. And
yeah, sorry, it's not
it's
not a very clear chat. The Knight Who Smoked the Laughing Tree asks,
Oh, good name.
Q&A unrelated, but is there any relation to the symbolism of the brave companion signal, which is a black goat with bloody horns, and Dorn's sigil, the sun spear? Maybe they're over in Sellsword Company? Question mark.
I'm not sure how to link those two exactly. I usually let Martin draw the links. Like if I see the goat of Qohor juxtaposed with the Dornish symbolism, then I'll think about how they relate to another. But I don't really associate different symbols with another unless they appear side by side in the books or unless they have matching language. And those would be a little bit different. The black goat symbolism is obviously like demonic horned lord symbolism. That's how I would interpret that. And of course, it has everything to do with forging Valyrian steel through blood magic and stuff like that. That's the primary. And then that's all wrapped into Harrenhal when they all show up to Harrenhal and Vargo Hoat dies there. But all right, next question.
I think this one was at me. Bronze dragons are high ranking. Do you think that's why George R. R. Martin gave Jaehaerys I the dragon Vermantor, the Bronze Fury, since he is considered one of the greatest Targaryen kings? Yeah. I mean,
makes sense.
It does. In the Dragons of Pern series, the bronze riders are typically like the leaders if they're male, and female dragons or gold dragons are the largest, and they are they're like gender exclusive. Like bronze is male, gold is female. It's not fluctuating in that world. So I definitely think. What was that movie that you and me and Quinn were talking about, Lucy? Dragon something.
It's something really generic.
Yeah, it's like Dragon Quest or something, but that's specifically what George R. R. Martin has said Verminthor is related to. I think it's Vermithrax is the greatest dragon ever who's in that movie or something.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
cool.
So I hope that answers your question. Thoroughly.
All right, next one.
Let me see if there's any more that I pulled. I do not have any more.
Misty306 asks me, and I'll refer it to everyone else too. What have I been reading while waiting for the Winds of Winter? I read stuff that I do to research this podcast. You know, I don't really. I've been meaning to get to Sanderson's third book, and I haven't yet. And I'll read any Scott Lynch books that come out or Rothfuss books that come out, but I'm up to date on all those. So I've mostly been just researching and writing right now. And as I've been telling you, I'm getting ready to move. So I'm super busy just doing this podcast and keeping it going. So yeah. What about y'all? What are y'all reading?
I'm reading Dream Songs 1 and 2 right now.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So is Joe Magician.
Yeah.
I'm reading like 3 different things right now. I've been slowly making my way through the collected works of H.P. Lovecraft, very slowly, but it's still getting there. I'm actually doing a reread with a couple of other people of a Susan Cooper series called The Dark is Rising.
Oh my God, that's a great freaking series.
So good, isn't it?
Oh my God, it's Finger Bang!
Oh no.
Hey, nobody knows that one.
Oh, I'm still trying to make my way through The White Goddess. It's slow going. It's a little bit of a slog once you get past a certain point, but I'm getting there.
Yeah, I have been reading most recently in terms of fiction. I've been reading N.K. Jessman's The Fifth Season, which it's part of a trilogy of books. She just won the Hugo Award for the last book in the series. If you're looking for female voices in fantasy, absolutely check her out if you haven't already. She's incredible, and they're really great books with lots of themes that are very similar to George R. Martin. I have also been making my way through Dream Songs. I finished Dream Songs 1 and I'm about halfway finished with Dream Songs 2. And then, on Twitter, Gray Area mentioned the Great Lectures series that you can download off of Audible if you have an Audible membership.
Great courses. It's great courses.
Great courses. Yeah, that's right.
Big fan. Yep. Good stuff.
They're great. And there's a great courses on the great mythologies of the world. And so I have been listening to that. Right now I'm listening to, I'm in the section about African mythology, which I knew absolutely nothing about. So that's been really fun.
That's definitely something I would like to catch up on somehow in my spare time.
And I was going to add, as you right before you actually started talking, that N.K. Jemisin is the one I'm set to read next. She won 3 Hugos in award. Everyone's like talking about her, so I was like, well, she must be good. So yeah, I haven't checked out a new series in a while, but that will definitely be the next one that I check out because it looks promising. Looks promising. A lot of people I respect are into it, so there you go. So now chat. Now is your chance, folks. Questions, firemen. As far as the 3 long night thing, I just don't see any evidence for other long nights. I don't know what the evidence is. I've seen a couple of theories about it. They don't really make any sense to me. So I just think there was one. And I think it was the time when the meteors came and the moon cracked, and it hasn't happened since then. And if it happens again, we'll need more meteors. And I don't know. Either you guys have anything to say about that, or?
I'm glad we have another moon.
I was going to say there's only 1 moon left, so.
True. Okay, so
I don't really understand how there could be proof of another long light. I mean, like that kind of confused me. So go ahead.
I think somebody was talking about like, well, the 5 forts were supposedly built before the long night to keep out the Lion of Night and his demons.
Okay.
And people are thinking, well, should the Lion of Night couldn't exist before the long night? But that's not true, because what it is with the Lion of Night and the Maid of Light, that's simply the day-night cycle personified as a married couple. The Maid of Light is the sun, and the Lion of Night is just the night sky or the night sun. And so it says that before the blood betrayal, they were in harmony, which means that day and night came and went like it normally should. And that during the long night, the Maid of Light hit her face, and it was just the Lion of Night for years and years and years. So they're not saying that the Lion of Night is like a demon that's created during the long night. That's simply the night personified as a god who then takes over in place of any sort of balance during the long night. So I don't think that that's the 5 forts is evidence that there was a long night before. I think the demons have always existed, and there's always been a need to build forts, and it's just a previous cycle of war with some other demons, I mean, who knows?
Yeah. I think some of that too is just the further back you go in history, the more wonky the timeline is going to get. So I think some of the statements about like when things are built, have to be taken with a grain of salt anyway. Like that's ancient enough kind of mythology in the world that it doesn't really make sense to think that that's created this, that's anything other than a kind of like a repetition of the same kind of basic mythological idea, as opposed to an event happening multiple times.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Too much time has elapsed. Everything is all messed up. Nobody knows the true story. And Martin is capitalizing on that.
So, guys, I really liked the dragons waking from stone from the pyramid. That was a good catch. It was an obvious one that I kind of missed. Let's see. There was also in the scene, I think I've got plans to go back to it on another episode, but to get into that chamber, Arch uses a hammer to open the door. And then there's like a screaming on the hinge, I want to say, too, there.
Yeah, I think it's it has like 2 screaming hinges. Mm-hmm.
Right, and all the screaming hinge stuff applies to Nissa Nissa's scream and the idea of Nissa Nissa as a door opening up the portal to the Weirwoods. So we're going to talk about all that. Oh, yes. But there's definitely a big fat hammering going on to open that door, which is pretty cool. And, that's right. That's the other thing I wanted to talk about. So at the moment that Quentin is freeing the dragons down below in the pyramid, there's something going on in the heart of the pyramid, which is Sir Barristan penetrating the pyramid with his white sword, which he gets bloody. And he kills a couple people, he kills Kraz, and then he arrests Hizdar. And at the moment he arrests Hizdar, somebody runs in and is like, the dragons are free. and it's like right after he killed somebody, and the death is a total Nissa Nissa thing where he stabs them and gets his whole sword red, and it catches the firelight too. So it's like a blood and fire sword that was created right when the dragons woke. So it's a really nice combination of scenes there that lay over top of one another.
Do I dare say that a bloody sword is a beautiful thing?
Just
not say that.
Oh, that was perfect. Oh, Lady Shar pops in with a super chat. Thanks, Lady Shar. Thanks for coming. Thanks for all the cool artwork that you've been pumping out into the fandom lately. She's been giving everyone cool avatars.
Yeah, thank you, Lady Shar.
Big thanks. Oh, yeah.
So, Melanie and Maester Merry, feel free to, if there's anything you want to follow up on the episode at all, feel free to put it forward.
I wanted to say one more thing about the alchemical wedding and where Dany places her egg. I brought it up in the chat, but I don't know if you have the chance to see it. But I like the idea of the green egg being placed next to Drogo's head in reference to it being his third eye and his third eye opening. That's all.
I think it's a good correlation with the pyramid being at the top of the pyramid. I realized that like last night or something after I finished the essay. I was like, oh, duh, he's at the top of the pyramid. It's the all-seeing eye, you know? So very cool.
Yeah, one of the other things that caught me when I was, during the stream was Rhaego in the Tent of Shadows reminds me so much of Patchface saying the shadows have come to dance,
Yes.
and the shadows have come to stay. So this reminds me of like a sea flooding the earth, right? That's the shadows have come to dance, and that's what's happening in the tent. That's the beginning of all this green magic or this dark magic awakening. And so I thought it was interesting to bring up Rhaego in the context of the green dragon and the green sea, because it makes that aspect of the prophecy come that much more to light.
Nice. And the dancing shadows, to me, are a clear reference to Kali, who is known as Dancing Kali. And there's a whole myth about her dancing and Shiva and the destruction of the world and stuff. And this shadow dance theme is run through a few other things. In fact, the boat that picks up Davos off the spears of the Merling's King is called Sheala's Dance. And Sheala is another name for Kali. It's a variant of one of Kali's different names. And so he's telling us straight up that this boat that sort of plucks people from, Davos is basically dying and he's in the sea or whatever on the Merlin King spear. And Sheala's Dance basically plucks him out of the sea and gives him rebirth. And Kali's role is basically she's known as the blackness between the stars. It's the cosmic womb tomb. She supposedly exists before the universe and will exist after the universe. So she's like a priori. It's sort of like outside all the confines of time and the cycles of everything. She gives birth to everything. All these things pop out of Kali's forehead and stuff. And so the blackness between the stars is my favorite reference because Kali is strongly associated with the cosmic ocean, which is basically the dark womb of the universe. And so all this shadow dancing tied to birth and death scenes, like Rhaego dying and the dragons waking, or Davos dying and being resurrected. It's all very tied to Kali's symbolism. And outside the tent of dancing shadows, there's Kali stuff going on. One of the blood riders swinging his scythe appears to have 4 arms while he has his scythe, which is an exact Kali image. She has a sickle in one of her 4 arms. So that's going to be in an episode. I keep teasing the Kali stuff, but I wanted to give you a little bit of it because I've been teasing it for so long. So it's really great, and it ties into the idea of a sea as an underworld.
That's awesome.
It's interesting that you bring that up because I'd actually pulled one of the, I'd pulled the passage of Davos's drowning and resurrection, and there's this part where he thinks, if I came up under a ship, I would drown. If he surfaced amidst the floating patches of wildfire, the first breath would sear his lungs to ash. So this is the hell that's created by the wildfire, above the sea. but he has just swum deeper and deeper and deeper to escape the to escape the wildfire. As opposed to swimming upwards, we have this image of him swimming down and down and down deeper. And he thinks, I twisted in the water to look up, but there was nothing to see but green darkness. And suddenly he spun too far and he could no longer tell up from down. And that just seems like this beautiful match for what you were talking about with Kali and the space between things in the underworld and the darkness, because that is exactly the description of the space that we get in when Davos is drowning before he's brought up by that boat.
Nice. Yeah, it's the whole Blackwater thing, and Davos especially is a great synthesis of fire and water, drowning and burning. He says, my sons and 1,000 others drowned and burned to make a king in hell. That was the line. And so it gives you this simultaneous drowning and burning man symbolism, which will make more sense once we go under the sea next week.
I don't want to go like completely off the rails, but I love
the rails.
I love the idea of juxtaposing the frozen, cold hell that's reserved for Starks and this hell that Davos almost enters into. That's a hot, burning one. That juxtaposition.
Yeah, well, so there's lots of fire under the sea, but then there's also the others with their frozen pond and ice lake cracking symbolism. And there's Lucifer trapped in the frozen lake that we've talked about. So there seems to be definitely a fiery and a cold part of the underworld. And Patchface, of course, says that under the sea, the flames burn green and black and blue, right? Mm-hmm. And blue fire is the others. Green fire is just what we talked about, green seer dragons. And black fire is we tie it to Azor Ahai, the Dark Solar King. So you can see what's happening in here is basically Azor Ahai, the black dragon, think Rhaegar when he dies, goes into the Weirwood net, and then creates both the green fire, the fiery green seers, and the others, who are the blue fire, the cold fire. And others come out of the cold pond, and the fiery Night's Watch green zombies are reborn from the Weirwood net. So there you go. Ta-da!
I totally forgot. There was one thing that I wanted to bring up about the symbolism of the burning tree and the green dragons and wildfire is that the pyromancers talk to Tyrion about how they tell Tyrion that the wildfire is stored in jars shaped like fruit. That's how King Aerys wanted them, shaped like fruit.
Yeah, so the ripe fruits.
Yeah, they're overripe fruits. They're ripe fruits, and it's again and again in Tyrion's chapters. We get that in that Tyrion chapter, we get these description of them as overripe fruits, and so this is the fruit of the burning tree. Wildfire is the fruit of the burning tree, and I was just kind of struck by how well that fits with the green seer imagery of the burning tree.
Something else that occurred to me about the overripe fruit, I really like that as an idea of like a transition between Garth the Green and the summer imagery. That's like, it's like when summer has gone on for too long and things are just overripe and starting to decay and get nasty. And like, it's the transition into what will be the Grey King's realm.
And in fact, Rhaegal's scales, are compared to summer and fall.
The bronze of fall and the green of summer.
Rhaegal was made of the green of summer and the bronze of fall. So it's exact same idea, like summer turning to fall. That's what we're talking about here. It's the beginning of the journey towards the long night.
And that's the same imagery when Ned has this conversation with Pycelle in Game of Thrones. And Pycelle is talking to him about the long summer. And there's all this vivid imagery about how hot it is. He mentions pomegranates, and he's talking about overripe fruit when he's describing this long summer. And it's a really, Mel, it's a really good point because it's a common recurring motif of overripe fruit associated with, the death of summer.
Right.
Helen
So
O'Grady brings up a really good point about the oranges in Dorne being way overripe and just like
about to
falling
say,
from the
yeah,
trees.
the blood
That was so
oranges
good.
falling from the tree. Exactly. Yeah.
Just
Doesn't
right.
that kind of say like that it's at the end of an era if you think about it? In a lot of like 17th century I want to say European, Dutch specifically paintings, they paint like still lifes, and a lot of them went really metal with it. God, I'm terrible at explaining art history, but some of them would go really metal with it, and they would paint dead fruit. And symbolically, there were all these meanings. Like I had one teacher who just would not stop with the penis references. Like anytime there was anything oblong in there, she'd be like, "And this obviously represents a phallus." And I'm like, "Can we just talk about the metal fruit and the dead fruit and how it's like it symbolized like society collapsing?" And at the time, like in the period of time that came from, that was very appropriate. So we could kind of think of the overripeness as like, you know, the summer that's almost breaking. It's almost the end of the world, dude.
And yep, that's exactly right.
Dude.
And of course, next week we're going to talk about drinking the fire of the gods. And I'm going to compare drinking wildfire to the idea of drinking other substances that are like the fire of the gods. And so that you think of Aryan Bright Flame, who thought he was going to turn into a dragon by drinking wildfire. So it's very similar to Quentin trying to ride the green dragon and become a dragon rider. And neither one works out. So, and then
Burns
of course,
worse than Bacardi 151.
yes. So Joseph Newhouse, I think, has the comment of the day. He says, pomegranate is the root etymology of grenade. So the ripe fruit could be the same as the holy hand grenade of Antioch. First, you must count to 1, and then proceed into the number 2, and then to 5. 3, sir, 3. Anyways.
The number of counting must be 3.
3. 3 shall be the number of the counting.
1.
Very nice. Very nice.
2, 5.
But the point is, of course, the burning, these are the fruits of the burning tree. That's a very good way to put it, Mary. If we're tying together, wildfire and green seer symbolism, then it makes sense to call them the fruit of a tree. And obviously they're burning fruits, so they could only come from a burning tree. And at the Battle of the Blackwater, there's plenty of that symbolism. So very nice, very nice. Well done. I love you guys.
We got to look at Sanri's dragon now, though. It's amazing small.
I've been dying to see this.
I see that it's got a ways to go, but it's looking amazing.
Oh, yeah.
So
I just put in some rough underwater lighting.
Oh, okay, I see.
I'm painting them in, and it's hard to paint stuff underwater, so this one might take me a while.
So
gotta get cool ripple stuff.
By the way, I don't know if you guys can see it, but way in the back corner of my room, I've put up my piece of artwork from Sanri. It's the Jon Snow print that says "Watchers" on the wall, and it has the quote on it, and I just love it.
Oh, that's my favorite one.
Nice. And of course, if you look at my screen and you look back over this shoulder, you will see Sanri's custom cold hands, which here, I'll go grab it 1 second.
I spoil my friends.
You do. You truly do. I was lucky enough to
shown
get the dragon egg in the fire.
Before, but let's let me turn off my ring light here so you can see it a little bit. There you go.
I love that frame.
Yes, this was a total pawn shop score. Nice, got that old feel. But anyways, good job, Sanri.
Oh, thank you.
Good job.
You
Happy
add
birthday.
so much to the fandom, Sanri. Oh my gosh.
I try. It makes me very happy to come do silly drawings and sometimes serious drawings for you guys. And thank you, LML, for putting up with my constant jokes and nonsense. It's my purpose.
We need a little bit of nonsense. And like I always say, I'm, in the process of figuring out how to do all my different formatting, but I've pretty much settled on the idea of just having regular live streams, which are full of fun bullshit, and then cleaned up podcasts, which are narrowed down to just the material. And that way people can choose their mythical astronomy experience based on what they like. But Sanri, I've really loved these live. Let me just talk about this for a second. There's several reasons why I like these live streams, and super chats are not the only reason. As I've been one person accused me, oh, hey, Lamel, you're just doing live streams to make super chats, which of course there's nothing wrong with trying to make money off of what I do. But what I like is getting the instant feedback. I like presenting the ideas and then seeing people talk in the chat right here. It gives me an idea of which ideas are resonating with people. And that has been incredibly valuable for me as feedback. And then also, as much as possible, I'm recording the performance that I'm giving and then using that to edit down to the podcast and then re-recording bits that are too fucked up or whatever. But I feel like the performance is a little more energetic when I have the live audience. And so the podcast, I feel like it listens a little bit more engaging when I'm talking to actual people as opposed to speaking in an empty room. So hopefully it's making the podcast better too. But that's kind of what I'm doing right now. So,
I mean, I download them and I have like the Android podcast app or whatever. And funnily enough, on the very first day, whenever they released it, it shows up on my phone. It's like, you may like mythical astronomy. And I'm like, I do indeed download. So like for when I travel and stuff, I like being able to listen to all my podcasts. So,
yeah. Or if you want to go back and, re-listen, then you probably don't want to listen to all the banter again. The jokes aren't as funny a second time. So
I'm definitely not as funny the second time.
So I will be putting out the cleaned up version of this in a couple days. And the same thing next week. I'll put out Weirwood Compendium 6, The Devil in the Deep Green Sea, which will have a heavy debt to Ravenous Reader, of course. And that it will be, like I said, I'll be live performing it again next week. It'll be about the same length. And then we'll follow up with a little bit of chat and I'll edit it and put it out as a podcast. So that's what we're doing. And then I'll probably get maybe take a week off or something and then get some Weirwood between two Weirwoods going. We'll see. So Maester Merry and MelanieLot7, thank you for appearing. And MelanieLot7, thank you especially for reading the quotes today. Please,
pleasure.
Melanie, go first and remind everybody what your channel is and what you're doing and what you got coming up next.
My channel is aptly named MelanieLot7, and like I said, there's only one video up there, but soon there will be more. Please be patient with me. And you'll find me a lot on Twitter. I'm at MelanieLot7, 7 as in like the number 7, not spelled out.
I'm Maester Merry, the Faceless Maester, and you can find me on YouTube at Up From Under Winterfell. I have a series of essays analyzing Bravos. I just got done with a video essay examining the magic of the Hall of Faces and the magic of the Red Candles. My next essay is going to be focused on the motives of the Faceless Men. So it will be a little bit of a return to a more political analysis.
Cool.
And I've been doing some research on the historical Guild of Assassins, that there's actually an SSM that says that's what inspired George R. R. Martin to create the Faceless Men. So I've been doing a lot of research on them, and I'm excited to kind of pull in some real world history into my next essay.
Nice. I love how well all your penchant for wearing costumes plays into your faceless maesterness, because nobody knows what your real hair even looks like. Like, we don't know. All you've given us is fake identities. So
it's much better that way. My real hair is not this interesting.
Well, it's hard to beat a green wig now, isn't it? Okay, so yeah, so there you go. And then of course Sanrixian's art can be found at sanrixian.com, as we all know, and you can find t-shirts and stickers and prints, and it is humming. There are discounts. You can use code LML to get a discount, and there's 2 for $40 t-shirts, and if you don't have some stuff already, go get it. Did I cover all the bases, Sanrixian?
Yes, you did.
Nice.
Thank you. Yes, that's about it.
I've heard you do it a couple times now, so I'm getting it down.
Just harass me on Twitter also. I love that. I love talking to people. So
yeah. And then once again, I'll ask you to, get on Twitter and follow us all. I'm at the Dragon LML. Read, what are your Twitter handles real quick, guys? At Sanrixian and
at Sanrixian.
I'm at MelanieLot7. I'll put it in the chat.
And at Maester Merry, Merry, like the Hobbit.
Very good, very good. Get on Twitter, follow us all, participate in the Twitteros. And like I said, before you go, if you wouldn't mind going to the Between Two Weirwoods YouTube channel and giving it a subscribe, hit the notification bell, as Gray likes to say, and that way you will know when I do a Between Two Weirwoods episode, because it won't be on this channel. It'll be on that channel, and you won't know unless you go subscribe. So please go do that. And if before you take off, give this video here a like on your way out. That would be nice. It'll help people see it more. There's the Between Two Weirwoods in the link, and I'll have it, of course, on the info for the chat. The main thing is that the number 2 is a number 2. So it's between number 2, like doo-doo, Weirwoods. Yeah, there you go. You cesspoolers out there. So thanks, everyone. Thanks, Melanie. Thanks, Mary, for joining me. Thanks, Sanri. The Sea Dragon is looking great. It's coming along swimmingly, if I might say so myself. And I can't wait to finish product. And that's it, guys. I'll see you next week. The same bat time, same bat channel, 3 o'clock Eastern, right here. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.